Here's special guest host, Larry Fedoruk.
Good morning. Welcome to Friday. Welcome to the program. Happy Valentine's Day. I'm telling you, the price of chocolate has forced me to eat less chocolate. And ultimately, isn't that a good thing? I don't know. I still buy the chocolate. It's just I try and make it last a little longer, you know. A bag of chocolate bits could easily be gone in one sitting, you see, but I'm stretching it out more, not just based on the price, but based on my own health, I guess. You know, I love a chocolate. I love chocolate. Chocolate's my go-to thing, you know. I could go to the fanciest restaurant and have like this huge meal, and at the end they would, do you want any dessert, sir? The creme brulee, the flambe, the cherries, jubilee. And I would like, I don't know, do you have any O. Henry bars? Like, I wouldn't mind one of those if you got. It's just I love chocolate, and I love the commercial chocolate, and the problem is it's the price of chocolate. It's not just because of Valentine's Day per se. I mean, we noticed the price of chocolate was up, like not just inflationary price. It just seemed to be really expensive. At Christmas time. As a matter of fact, even at Halloween. At Halloween, the chocolate prices were so high for a box of, 35 or 50 little mini treats that you would buy to hand out and see how many actually made it to the kids at the door and how many just were eaten before Halloween. Those were expensive. Like, it's been an issue for some time now, not just inflationary, but the price of chocolate. So a few weeks ago, I did a podcast. I have a podcast called Later That Same Life. It's out every Thursday. It's weekly. And it's a different topic every week. And a few weeks ago, I did a podcast on the discontinuation of the cherry blossom chocolate confection. It's hard to call it a chocolate bar or a candy bar because it's this lump of chocolate with a cherry in the middle with cherry syrup. The cherry blossom, it's been around since the 1890s. Most of us probably forgot that cherry blossoms exist, probably haven't had one in forever. Whenever I mention cherry blossom to adults, especially adults my age, people go, oh, do they still make those things? And they did up until a few weeks ago when Hershey Canada announced they were discontinuing this thing after about 130 years. So I went to my convenience store and I bought out whatever they had, 11. They had 11 left. I was surprised they had any. And I still have about 5 or 6 left because I say I'm stretching them out. But I looked into the cherry blossom. I did a podcast on it. And I also looked into the chocolate industry. And it's interesting because, and we mentioned this on 570 News this morning, that 70% of the world's chocolate comes from 2 countries in West Africa. Ghana and the Ivory Coast, Cote d'Ivoire. And here's this is more than you ever wanted to know about chocolate, but you're either going to impress or bore your friends, depending on what kind of friends you have, next time with your knowledge of chocolate. So here goes. The interesting thing is, and now 30% comes, there's a couple of countries in South America and also in Mexico have the cocoa bean, but 70% comes from these 2 West African countries, very small geographical area. So number one, because it's so concentrated there, if you have weather problems such as climate change or those caused by climate change, or you have a blight of some sort on a crop, it affects the entire area and a lot of the world's chocolate. It's not like, well, we'll just go to the alternative, plan B. So 70% of the world's cocoa beans come from this little area. And not only that, in those 2 small countries, there is something like 2 million cocoa bean farms. So in other words, there's no big industrial farms. There's no big cocoa plantations. There's about 2 million small family farms who rely on the cocoa bean to exist. That is their annual family income. And furthermore, 90% of these farmers barely make a living wage based on the cocoa beans they can grow and sell. Now, the other part of it, and I think something like half of them are below uh, what international organizations call a poverty level. They're below the poverty level. Never mind, can't make a living wage or make a living wage. They just based on harvesting cocoa beans. So that's part of the issue. Now you say, well, who are the chocolate makers? Who are the big chocolate makers? Because they have to be billionaires, and they are. And there's only 5 really in the world that are the big ones, and they are Mars and Hershey, Ferrero, Nestle, and one that you've probably never heard of. They're called Mondelez International. Mondelez is just the corporate name. They have Cadbury, and they have Toblerone, and they have Oreos, and they have just a lot of brands that include chocolate, okay? And Mondelez is probably the biggest one. Nevertheless, you say, well, it's those people. That's why the price of chocolate is up. Yes and no. They don't even buy the cocoa bean from the farmers. They don't even buy any of the cocoa. The cocoa processors, there's like 3 main ones, and I don't remember their names, and you wouldn't know them, but they pretty much buy all of the world's cocoa, and then they in turn sell it to any chocolate manufacturer, including the big 5 that I just mentioned. See? So that's the situation with chocolate in a nutshell. Chocolate in nutshells. Okay, but no, seriously, that's the situation where it's so concentrated. There are so few chocolate buyers, and then there's like a big 5 chocolate manufacturers that it's hard to have a very competitive chocolate industry where you can find some cheap chocolate, right? So that's why it's expensive. And basically, again, going back to climate change and other things that affect a cocoa bean plant or a farm rather in the course of a year, where once that happens and there's less cocoa bean, prices are automatically going to go up. But in the meantime, you can still, like I said, buy chocolate. Just buy less, eat less. And also flowers are very expensive. But at least if you're going out for dinner tonight, you're on the last night of the GST tax holiday. So some savings to be held there. Or you could just cuddle and watch a movie almost for free there, depending on what streaming service you're paying for. So anyway, happy Valentine's Day. And, really it is about just love and kindness. So those kinds of things you can pay forward and at no cost to yourself, no monetary cost to yourself. We got a great show lined up today. Let me tell you what we got after a short break. I'm Larry Fedoruk in for Mike Farwell. Back in a moment on 570 News Radio. Larry Fedoruk in for Mike Farwell on a Friday. Always fun on a Friday. We got a lot going on the program. Of course, you'll hear Mike tonight, 6:30 for the pregame here on 570 News Radio as the Rangers are in Kingston. And then Sunday, it's Sunday, Monday. It's Ottawa and Peterborough, so this extended road trip. And then it's the family day on Monday, so there'll be no Mike Farwell show. And then I'm back on Tuesday. So. And then Mike will be back in this slot next week. So, but tonight, 6:30, Mike Farwell, Paul Fixter, with the pregame and then the game at 7 o'clock. You can hear it all on 570 News Radio. In the meantime, in for Mike Farwell today, we've got a lot to talk about, some interesting people on the way as well. Just after 9:30, Dr. Kashif Prasada is going to join us. He's got a YouTube channel, by the way. He's an emergency room doctor, an emerge doctor, working out of Toronto. He's going to join us. We're going to talk about the flu season. You've heard the story on 570 News Radio in the last couple of days. We've been talking about this, how the flu season is peaking now, which is a little late. And I'm going to ask the doctor about this, but somebody said yesterday that your flu shot is generally, I say it's good for 3 months. Maybe that's not the right way to put it, but that's when it's most effective. And I'm like, geez, I'm pretty good on my flu shot. I got my flu shot this year. Usually I go even earlier, but I got it December 1st. Right around the beginning of December, I got my flu shot this year. And So I'm like, okay, December, January, February. Okay, I guess I'm still good for a vaccine. Anyway, I'll ask the doctor about that at 9:30. We're going to talk about the flu season and vaccines and all of that kind of stuff. And I guess the emergency rooms everywhere are reporting being somewhat overwhelmed by people coming in with the flu. And I know some people say, oh, you get a cold or the flu, just stay home, tough it out. But have I got the flu? Or do I have COVID? Or do I have RSV? There's a lot out there right now. And I guess people, from a precautionary point of view, they go, well, maybe I better go in and get checked out. It feels like just the flu, but I want to make sure. There's a lot going on out there. It's a lot going on out there. And then I also, when I got my flu shot, the week later, I was eligible for my next COVID update. So I go to the same drugstore, and I'm like, oh, yeah, you got the COVID shot? And he goes, yeah, we're just out Monday. We should be go on Monday. Okay, whatever. All right. So I go in Monday, and they're like, yeah, sorry, next week, probably next Monday or even Wednesday of next week. So, okay. I'm like, all right. And on Wednesday, they go, yeah, it's going to be another week at least. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, I noticed, by the way, that you got the new shipment of peanut butter is in, and you got that on sale on the shelves at the front. You can't get the COVID shot in? And they're like, oh. They stared at me blankly. It was a stupid remark anyway, but I'm like, yeah. Your crackers and your candy aisles are full, but you're a pharmacy. Can you not get the COVID shot in? I didn't even know if they ever got it in. I ended up one day being like an hour from my house somewhere, and there was a drugstore there. And I walked in and I said, by the way, have you got the COVID vaccine? They're like, yeah, you have to wait about 10 minutes. Do you mind? I'm like, no, that's it. Bam. But anyway, we'll talk flu shots with Dr. Prezada coming up after 9:30. Also, in our next half hour, 9:45, Liz Montero is going to join us. She's with YW Kitchener-Waterloo, and they're having their second annual Women Choosing Change Speaker Series. The second annual Women Choosing Change Speaker Series starts on the 19th next week. And they have six dates coming up with different speakers and all that. We're going to go through that with Liz Montero. Good opportunity to see some fantastic speakers. Michael Harris will be here for Council Chambers. We do Council Chambers every Friday here on 570 News Radio and the Mike Farwell Show. And Michael Harris is, of course, Regional Councilor, Kitchener, and Chair of the Budget Committee for Kitchener. And he's going to join us. After 10 o'clock, we'll talk about the state of the council and the state of the region, so to speak. That's not an official designation there, but we'll talk about that. Tariffs, the election, lots to talk about with Michael Harris coming up after 10 o'clock. I mentioned, of course, the Rangers on the road. And even when Mike's away from this show, he's, of course, usually on the road with the Rangers. And that means the coaches show, I guess it's a long-winded way to say that the coaches show coming up this morning at 10:30 will feature Mike Farwell with UCO Hocus, and then the other coaches show with Paul Fixter. That's all coming up. So you'll hear them coming up after 10:30 this morning. And then, of course, on Fridays, we do the Friday 4 panel. My guests will join me between 11 and noon, and we'll discuss some of the top stories of the week, which will include, big surprise, tariffs and the provincial election and all of that. And then between noon and 1, as always, every day, but especially fun on a Friday to get all your frustrations of the week out on the noon to 1 hour on a Friday. It's the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour. So that's our show for today. Hope you can stick around. We'll be back with more in a moment. 570 News Radio. Larry Fedoric in for Mike Farwell. If you're just joining me at the beginning of the show, I went through the price of chocolate here on a Valentine's Day. So another report this morning I thought was kind of interesting, just pass along quickly the gist of it. Flowers in the United States, especially in Los Angeles, they did a report on flowers. And apparently there's a flower area of Los Angeles. It's it's many, many acres of warehouse and things where people go to buy flowers, and so do even vendors go and buy their flowers there. And there's just like rows and rows, and like I said, like acres of flowers in these buildings. And it's been pretty quiet there because I didn't know this. The U.S. is one of the biggest importers of flowers in the world, and they're kind of worried about tariffs, right? And the extra cost that flowers may have when tariffs, and they import flowers from a lot of countries, including Canada. Flowers, go figure. I guess, when they talk about all this trade between our nations, I guess it's everything. We think of steel and aluminum and auto parts going back and forth and all this stuff, and we don't think of flowers. Flowers, we export flowers to the United States. How nice of us, and the importers would be having to pay a tariff, potentially, on some geraniums and roses and things. And not only that, but a lot of the flowers that they may grow, and a lot of this flower area in Los Angeles is run by immigrants. And they're quite worried. I guess it's been really quiet. Normally it's super busy coming up to Valentine's Day in this flower area. But I guess it's kind of quiet there today because they fear the ICE people are going to launch these immigrant raids in Los Angeles the way they did in Chicago and New York. And because they know a lot of immigrants work and frequent this area when it's busy retail times, they think, well, we're going to be raided, so we better not show up. Like, bizarre. It's just a consequence we might not think of things like tariffs and Trump policies. It's Valentine's Day and flowers. Of course, that's only Los Angeles. I wouldn't worry about your flowers in Kitchener-Waterloo. And as I said earlier, the price of flowers, the price of chocolate, these are two standard gift items for Valentine's Day. But there's a lot of things you can do just to be lovely and kind to a special someone today. So that don't necessarily involve money if you can't if you don't have it. Still to come on the show this next half hour, we're going to talk to Liz Montero of YW Kitchener-Waterloo about their speaker series, Women Choosing Change Speaker Series, second annual, starts next week, and there's 6 dates going through the spring and summer that you will want to know about to attend the speaker series. That's coming up. And then, of course, the flu season is hitting a peak a little late this year, like right now. We'll talk to an emergency room doctor about the flu season and what's been happening. That's coming up next here on 570 News Radio.
Here's special guest host, Larry Fedoruk.
Women Choosing Change from the KW, or the YW, KW, if you will. That is their second annual speaker series. We're going to talk to Liz Montero of the YW Kitchener-Waterloo coming up in the next 10 minutes. We'll get some idea of what the speakers are. The first one is next Wednesday, so we'll get thoughts on that and the others in this speaker series. Right now on the show, flu season is peaking right about now. It's usually a little later than it peaks, but here we are. And the Ontario ERs are being hit pretty hard. Our guest is an emergency room physician working out of Toronto. Dr. Kashif Prasada is joining us. Good morning, Dr. Prasada. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, Larry.
What are you seeing in emergency rooms you work? Because we have reports from different health regions. What are you seeing where you work?
So starting about a month ago, we started seeing a lot of flu cases, but it's really gotten a lot busier in the last couple of weeks, especially hitting elderly and young children. Often we have to admit these folks because they get hit the hardest, and that's putting a stress on hospital beds and on ER wait times now.
And some reaction, I'm glad you mentioned that it's elderly and young people because those are the most vulnerable. And I guess the average person might think if I have a little flu or a little something, I can tough it out myself. I don't need to go to emerge, but these other people feel they have to, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, people, there's a big difference between a little cold and the flu with a capital F. So cold is, a runny nose, a slight sore throat, and you're good to go in 2-3 days. The flu is like you've been hit by a truck. It's body aches, high fever, severe fatigue. It's very different, and we commonly mix up the two. But the flu, you'll know it when you get it, and even for healthy, young people or middle-aged people, it can still hit you fairly hard.
And talk about the symptoms, because I would be in a vulnerable category, and if I have a little flu feeling, I'm thinking, could it be a COVID? Could it be an RSV? Are people confusing those, or should they be?
It's very hard to tell them apart. Like, you can only really do it with, those rapid tests we used to have. Flu and COVID are very similar. COVID might give you a loss of sense of taste and smell, which is unique to COVID. But the symptoms are very similar. Like, you'll get, especially if you get the worst forms, you'll get, high fevers. You'll be very tired all the time. You'll have aches all over your body. Sometimes people get aches in their muscles so bad that they can't walk as much. That's another reason we will admit people. In its most severe form, it can cause you to have trouble breathing. So if you're breathing very fast, and you need oxygen, we have to admit you for that. If you don't want to eat or drink anything, you lose your appetite completely, you get dehydrated. We have to give people IV fluids and admit them for that. So some people will get very mild symptoms, some people will get very moderate, and some people will get very severe symptoms. It's basically the luck of the draw, your age, and what medical conditions you have.
And I assume it varies patient to patient, but in general terms, if you have to be admitted, are you there for a day, a week? How long usually?
Mostly, a few days. Like, I admitted a child just a couple of days ago, like 6-year-old, not eating, drinking for a day, completely unresponsive. I checked the records now, like they're up and they were discharged 2 days later. So like you just need some IV fluid support. Maybe some people need a little bit of oxygen, maybe sometimes antibiotics for the bacterial infections that can come with it. And most people are good to go. If you're unlucky, or if your immunity's down and you need to be admitted for a longer period of time, it can sometimes go very badly. And it does, even for young people sometimes.
So you would encourage people, especially the vulnerable, even though you're busy, to at least check in somewhere if they're feeling the symptoms?
Not like, I would say very severe symptoms. So like what I tell my patients is that if you're having trouble breathing, you're having trouble catching your breath, even doing basic things, that's a very bad sign. If you basically not eating or drinking, if you can't get yourself out of the couch, you're having trouble walking, things that you'll know, like things that you can't function in your daily life, that's when you really need to come in. Most people can, with fluids and just tender loving care at home, can get through it. Antivirals help a lot with the flu. There's actually a decent antiviral available called Tamiflu that your family doctor can prescribe for you as well.
The Tamiflu, I forgot about that. Now, what about vaccinations, though? I usually go pretty early, and this year I was actually a little late, December 1st. Should I be thinking now that it's pushing 3 months since I was vaccinated? Should I be thinking about another vaccination or anything?
You know what? I think your timing is pretty good because, what's interesting is that the Americans do their vaccinations in August, September. And you're reading the news, like states like Louisiana and elsewhere are having the worst flu waves in 20 years. And that's probably because the immunity from their August, September vaccines are probably waning already. I got mine pretty late. Like I saw 5 flu cases in a row in the hospital. I ran to Shoppers and got my vaccination that day. So I got mine around the same time you did. And I think we're still fairly protected. 3-4 months is pretty good. I don't think you need a second one. And by the time in another few weeks, hopefully the season will be over.
Right. Yeah. So, okay, that's good to know because, and vaccinations, that's what I heard. They go about 3 months. Is that for everybody that they have immunity about that period?
Yeah, in general, like you have different parts of your immune system fight off infections. And you have an innate immune system that kills things before your antibodies or vaccine immunity kicks in. It's all individual, depends on the individual and your overall health. But 3-4 months is pretty fair to say.
All right, and I got to say, Dr. Prasad, when I saw your name on the list this morning of guests, I found out that you have a YouTube channel. Are you still active on that?
Not terribly active, but I'm fairly active on X and on Blue Sky. So I post some health-related stuff on there. They have been, like everyone, really concerned about what's happening in the U.S., but that's where I'm most active.
Okay. All right. Because you're also an emergency room physician, so I imagine that takes up a lot of your time. So I appreciate the time today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Good luck out there.
All right. Dr. Kashif Prasada is an emergency room physician. He works out of Toronto, but we've heard, of course, Kitchener-Waterloo, Niagara region also reporting that ERs are being hit pretty hard. And I guess I was half expecting this, come on, you're a little flu, stay home. Take some NyQuils and stay, don't go to work and don't be contagious and stay home. But no, I mean, really, especially young people, especially if you have kids, especially if you're a little older and you feel these symptoms. And as the doctor said, some of the more extreme symptoms where you just can't breathe, you can't function, you can't get out of bed, you can't really move, loss of appetite, all these kinds of things. Those are severe enough symptoms where you better go get checked out. Maybe, as he said, get some fluids, get some treatment, get some oxygen if it's that bad. It is there. You're going to wait. It's emergency rooms. You're going to wait. But at least when you're in an emergency room, you are near nurses and doctors and the health system. Even if it's slow or sluggish or overwhelmed, you're at least there in the system. So, as he said, be safe and good luck out there. This is the Mike Farwell Show. I'm Larry Fedoruk, filling in. It's 570 News Radio. I'm Larry Fedoruk in for Mike Farwell. I've been filling in for Mike off and on for a couple of years now at least, and it seems to me I have a memory of last year filling in for Mike talking about this topic that we're going to talk about now. It seems to me we did talk to Liz, but anyway, we'll see. It doesn't matter. We're talking today about the second annual speaker series, Women Choosing Change Speaker Series from YW Kitchener-Waterloo. And advocacy and communications manager at the YW Kitchener-Waterloo is Liz Montero, who joins us now. Good morning, Liz.
Hi, Larry. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thanks. I was trying to remember if we talked last year about this when I was filling in for Mike, but I don't know memory, but we're talking now, and that's the cool thing. And last year must have been a success because now here we are again with another series.
Exactly. We had a great series, and so we thought, let's try this again. So, yeah, we're holding our second annual YW Women Choosing Change series, and it begins next Wednesday. And
that is the first one. There's 6 dates, but Wednesday is the first one, approaching quickly.
That's right. So, yeah, it starts Wednesday, February 19th, and it spans over 4 months. So we have 6 sessions, and it goes till May 21st. And it's over the lunch hour, and it'll be held at Ken Sealing Waterloo Region Museum. And it starts around 11:30, and it goes till 1 p.m., and there's a catered lunch with each speaker.
All right. And that's the catered lunch included with the price of the ticket kind of thing?
That's right. Yeah. So you can go on to the ywkw.ca, our website, and under events tab, you just click on that and you can register there. And we are selling tickets individually for $30 or for the 6 for $150. And again, it includes the speaker and a catered lunch that we are offering.
Wow. You can't go out for lunch for $30. Never mind.
Well,
get a speaker.
So you're getting a bargain, yes.
So tell me about the first one here coming up on Wednesday. What's who's speaking? What's the topic?
That's right. So our first session next week is with community leader and playwright Tennille Warren. And their activism amplifies the voices of Black and immigrant and the 2S LGBTQIA plus communities. She's also going to be talking about some of her big plans that she wants to share with us. She recently was the playwright and director of a play that was in downtown Kitchener that ran for 2 weeks, and it was quite successful, and I think she has big plans in the future for more productions. And also some of the other topics I just want to touch on so that people have a sense of what we're talking about. We're going to be talking to women in tech who are, leading organizations, doing innovative work and research, and some of that research could really change the lives of women in the future. We're also going to speak to the executive director of Waterloo Region's first Indigenous Child Care Center, and that opened in February in Cambridge. And another session, we are talking to someone from another nonprofit organization on the concept of reducing stress and fear during periods of intense community need, which is what we're facing right now. And then how as organizations and how as people working in these organizations, how we can remain hopeful and mobilized during these times, which is something we're always talking about, even within our own circles.
Now, to give us a picture of this, they started at about 11:30. The lunch is included.
Yes.
You're trying to compact this, if you will, so that someone can easily make this a part of their day without having to take time off or do anything else like that.
That's right. That's right. And so people will have lunch, they're taking a break, there's free parking. So, we really took that into consideration. It's a very welcoming space at the museum, lots of windows. So it's a good time to socialize with other people like you and also to meet new people. And I think just the subject matter, we're talking about gender equity and challenges and hurdles that face women, and along with also the positive change that they're making in their everyday lives. So, you want to share that with other people, you want to learn from people, and that's what the series is really to learn from others and to see how you can play a role in the community that you live in.
Well, that's what I was wondering, if there's time for the interaction. I don't know that there may be Q&A sessions or anything, but at least there's time for interaction while you're there. Yeah.
There's definitely a Q&A after, and I kind of prompt that and take people in a direction. We're trying to make it very casual, too. Like, I'll sit with the speakers, and we've already planned ahead of time what we want to talk about. We also leave it open, though, to people to ask questions and to people to engage with us, and if they have issues that they think they want us to address. So it's very fluid that way, so that people can talk about what issues are important to them, and also the women can speak to power structures and speaking to resilience and how they really work within their environments and how we're trying to make change in the end.
Can men go?
Oh, of course. Yes, of course. Okay. And last year we had some men attend, and we've had men buy packages. So of course, because women and men, we interact in society and we all live together, and gender equity is just not an issue that women are facing. It's something that men need to participate with us.
Oh, of course. I just, when it's women choosing change, guys are going to go, gee, I don't know, can I go? I might learn something. I'm afraid,
Well, we all have partners, wives, daughters.
Right.
Aunts. We all have women in our lives that, we understand some of the issues they're facing because we're all integrated. So, I don't think you can talk about one without the other.
Of course, right. I'm just was making sure that it was all inclusive, all welcoming. Give us the website again and how people, because the first one is Wednesday, and we want people to come out.
That's right. So again, it starts next Wednesday, February 19th, 11:30 to 1, and it's the ywkw.ca. And so under the events tab, you can click on that, and it will take you to our registration page. So please join us.
Perfect. YWKW, Liz Montero. Thank you, Liz. All the best.
Well, thank you, Larry, and thanks for having me.
You bet. Liz Montero is Advocacy and Communications Manager at YW for Kitchener-Waterloo. This is 570 News Radio. Larry Fedoruk in for Mike Farwell. I'm going to share a secret. We just had Liz Montero on. She's with YW Kitchener-Waterloo talking about their speaker series. You can go to ywkw.ca to be part of this Women Choosing Change speaker series. But Liz is Advocacy and Communications Manager with YWKW. Advocacy. Can't say it. I know what you're saying. You're saying, Larry, you just said it. I know. I have to really try. And if I don't really try, it comes out advocacy. Advocacy. It's just a word that's somewhere between my brain and my tongue. It hits a roadblock, and it doesn't. One of the things about being a talk show host is the ability to say words. And when you can't say, and a lot of people, advocate. See, no problem. Advocate. He advocates. She advocates. Advocacy just doesn't work. Statistics, another one. Got to really try. Mayoralty. I usually just say mayoral or race for mayor. I won't even attempt mayoral. See what I mean? Mayoralty. Moralty. No, see, forget it. There's those. There's one more, and we just had one on yesterday. David Phillips, Environment Canada. Well, he's a climatologist, but he's also a meteorologist. Now, again, you're saying, Larry, you just said meteorologist, but I'll give you another secret. I can't say that word. It doesn't roll off the tongue for some reason for me. I can say supercalifragilisticexpialidocious. I can say onomatopoeia. I can say a lot of words, complicated words. Meteorologist. You know what I'm actually saying? Meteorologist. If I try and say meteorologist, it doesn't come out. Every time you hear me say meteorologist, I'm actually tricking my brain to say urologist. What kind of urologist is he? Well, he's a meaty one, I'll tell you that for sure. He's a meaty urologist. Advocacy. I'm just, you can fool some of the people some of the time, but you can't fool all the people all the time. And I just didn't want to fool you. I just like, hey, some words, those are the 4 big ones for me, but some words just don't come out the way they're supposed to when you're in talk radio, and you got to say all kinds of different words. We'll see if we run across any stumpers of words on our next segment. It's Council Chambers coming up next. Councillor Michael Harris joining us right after the news here on 570 News Radio.
Here's special guest host, Larry Fedoruk.
And did you hear the news? What? There's a Northern Ontario? Since what? Okay, I'm just being a Southern Ontario smartass, but that is the debate tonight in North Bay. And generally the provincial leaders debate, election debate, looking at Northern Ontario issues, and then the other debate, more general, Monday. So keeping an eye on that. And I mentioned that because we have a former MPP lined up today on Council Chambers. Yes, it's time for Council Chambers. And I do want to address the provincial election because we do have a former MPP with us, but currently Regional Councilor and Chair of the Budget Committee for Kitchener, our guest on Council Chambers today, Michael Harris.
Hey,
good morning, Michael.
Larry. Thanks for having me. I'm great.
Good to hear. And I'm going to start with, maybe people are tired of this already, but tariffs, because I know we talked about yesterday regional councils, Waterloo, Cambridge, committing to help fight tariffs, looking at what they can do. Can you talk about that? Because
Sure.
When we think of tariffs, we think of the federal government, but there's been a Team Canada approach, which includes provinces and municipalities.
Absolutely, Larry. We'll look at the proposed tariffs from the U.S. Are going to be felt broadly, of course, here in our community. I will tell you, 20% of our GDP and nearly 17% of our total workforce is in the manufacturing sector. And so, already we're going to be, impacted. I think there was a study that came out that said that we're probably the 4th or 5th most impacted community within Canada. I've got some numbers in front of me. In 2023, $19.4 billion of exports went out of this region. 97% of that is from our manufacturing sector. And so, we are obviously very concerned about that. Chair Redmond put forward a motion this week that was passed at Regional Council that would see staff explore options to limiting the impact of proposed tariffs here in our region. We've asked staff to review procurement processes and find opportunities that would increase demand of made-in product provisions. We've also asked our friends over at the Waterloo Economic Development Corporation through the Business Economic Support Team Waterloo Region, or BEST Waterloo Region, to develop an action plan to support local businesses and our collective economic interests. So, yes, people are rightfully nervous, but I can tell you that we've got our eyes on the ball here, and we're going to step up and do what we have to do to protect those good-paying jobs here in our community.
I'm glad you brought up that Canadian Chamber of Commerce report that came out yesterday. It was a real eye-opener because I think, especially someone like yourself, so involved in the community, would know some of these stats. But it was just a general wake-up, I think, for a lot of people that, how high up we were on the list, and the numbers you mentioned, how much how many dollars actually go in our manufactured dollars that we count on our customer, the United States.
Yeah, in Ontario, 77% of all domestic exports go to the U.S. So, we're going to be impacted for sure. I'm hoping that cooler heads will prevail, that Mr. Trump is, tossing things out here and there. He's walked it back before. You recall in 2018 when he did the same thing, and we renegotiated NAFTA, and got those steel tariffs off. Look, we're good friends, we're best friends, we're neighbors, and I think hopefully he'll come to light in terms of the importance of our relationship. Or it's going to cost, folks a good amount. We already have an affordability crisis here in our community, in our province, in our country. No doubt they do too. And you start putting tariffs on things that come back and forth across the border, and U.S. citizens are going to feel in their pocketbook as well. And hopefully, that'll put pressure on him to walk things back. But we'll see where we go.
Well, I have some stats for you, and you can comment if you wish. But United States, 10% of their GDP comes from manufacturing. Almost 30% comes from importing, exporting. So I don't know why they're hurting or potentially hurting their importing, exporting to benefit manufacturing, which is a small part of their GDP. They just don't make things in America anymore like they used to.
Yeah, obviously he's coming fresh off of a big election win in some of these Rust Belt states that, have been impacted to other countries like China. I think that's probably, I'm just one guy here in the region, but, Canada is not the problem here, right? The focus should be other areas. But as I said to you, the numbers are huge here in our community. I think back in 2018, not 2018, but back during when I was an MPP, we were devastated in our community when we had some significant job losses through economic downturn, like Budd Automotive and Lear Seating, and of course the Snyder's plant's relocation. Like these hit our community hard. We have diversified since. Of course, but we're thinking about those individuals whose jobs are dependent on a lot of our manufacturing, capabilities here, and we're going to do our best to step up and support them locally, as I know our provincial and federal counterparts are as well.
You mentioned some of the things that are already underway, some of the things you're looking at, and those sound great. What else can we do? And is this kind of a lesson learned about diversification, for example?
Well, look, we can't ignore the fact that we've got big employers like Toyota, and then the offsets that has, the ripple effect here in our community. We've got a great tech community, obviously BlackBerry and Research in Motion, somewhat downsized since their heydays. And we've got a lot of, great unicorns, already here in our community, like Magnet Forensics and a whole bunch of other, high-tech leaders. We've got the academic institutions, healthcare, insurance is another big one. I know I'm maybe wading down a bit of a controversial path here, but, the region has taken a bold stance on, land acquisition that will make itself a candidate for future employment. And I think that strategy hopefully will pay off in the longer term to again attract big employers, maybe the new technologies of tomorrow or the future that we need to encourage to come here to Ontario, to KW, to the region of Waterloo. We're planning for the future to make sure that we've got land ready and available for these big employers to attract good paying jobs, because at the end of the day, that's what it's all about.
This is Council Chambers on 570 News Radio. Our guest is Michael Harris. He is Regional Councilor and also Chair of the Budget Committee for Kitchener. But I want to tap into his knowledge as a former MPP when Council Chambers continues in just a moment. Larry Fedoruk in for Mike Farwell. This is our regular Friday segment called Council Chambers. Our guest today on Council Chambers, Michael Harris, if you're just joining us. He's a
Well, that's first and foremost the objective, of course. I mean, the issues are somewhat similar but different. I would say to you, as an MPP, I was full-time, and there was the Queen's Park, bit, and then here in the local community. I would say that it's way more partisan, obviously, at Queen's Park and even Ottawa likely than it is at the region. I mean, I really have enjoyed my time as a regional councillor. It's my second term. As you mentioned, I'm finance and budget chair. That has its challenges, of course. Working with, 16 other individuals or 15, I guess, can be challenging at times because we all have our own different opinions, unlike at Queen's Park where, you're more party-based and you kind of go in there as a group. But that also has its benefits. I can go to the council table and speak, my own personal feelings that I feel represent my constituents the best without, being punished by some kid in short pants. I don't miss those days, Larry, whatsoever. And I think we're more collegial, of course, here at the region. We're part of a government, and we want to advance the best interest, I think, of our community. That's first and foremost, where sometimes, political agendas and party agendas can get in the way of just making good decisions.
Interesting provincial campaign here because we have Doug Ford having to sort of campaign in Washington, D.C., if you will, if you know what I mean. And it's a national issue that, of course, as we already talked, has trickled down to province and, of course, community. But how do you view this campaign so far?
Well, look, obviously, tariffs and what's happening south of the border has dominated the provincial, election discussion, even, federally. That's anyone is all talking about. I'm a big fan of fixed election dates. They are obviously enshrined into law. It was politically expedient to call an election, now perhaps a year and a bit out from the next, fixed election date, likely to get ahead of what we'll likely see or be a federal election either this spring or definitely by the fall. I know that there's a northern debate tonight or today, and there may be an opportunity where new issues, come out. I think that there are some pressing issues still: healthcare, education, our economy, jobs, investment. That are actually other more, other as important issues, frankly, on the Ontario agenda that should be discussed and debated because we want to know where the parties stand on those other items as well. But clearly, everyone is focused on tariffs and how they're going to impact us in Ontario and, more importantly, locally. So I understand that that's dominating the airwaves.
It's interesting. There was a story yesterday that if the front runner federally for the Liberals, Mark Carney, does in fact get anointed on the 9th of March, that on the 10th, he might just call an election instead of waiting for a non-confidence thing or some sort of election happening that way. So how do you see the political landscape after two elections, Ontario and federally? How do you see it in March or April?
Yeah, I mean, look, voters are going to have election fatigue. I wouldn't say that, I likely would expect that voter turnout provincially is going to be low, so it will. Unless there's a change election, you likely see a low turnout anyway. I was at Queen's Park back in the day when Dalton McGuinty resigned. He prorogued the legislature. They went into a Liberal leadership. They elected Kathleen Wynne. And I think that it wasn't soon long after that Kathleen Wynne called an election. And we should have taken them down at that point, the PCs, but we lost and we handed them a majority. So, look, new leader federally after, way too long with Justin Trudeau, the Liberal Party might see a breath of fresh air and new life into it. I think it'll be an interesting race. It sounds like Mark Carney will likely be the Liberal leader and next Prime Minister. But you may as well ride off the momentum of your election campaign for leader right into a general election and roll the dice, right? So we'll see what happens. But either way, the electorate pays for those elections. We'll have lots of folks at the door or not. It is nice and cold out, so they'll earn their keep. I don't miss those days campaigning, frankly, especially now in the cold. But we'll see where things go.
I think municipal elections are fall of 26. Got that right?
Correct. Yep. October 2026. So
we've got a ways to go for yet another election. But you know what? You said it, but I hope people come out and vote because it's minutes out of your day, and it's. I know you got to pay attention and learn the issues theoretically, but get out and vote. I'm just tell people get out and vote.
Absolutely. You know what? No vote, no say. Right. So take that time. It's. Something that people in the past have given their lives for to allow us the freedom to vote. Other countries that we know today don't have that, aren't afforded that opportunity. And so I've never missed an election, don't intend on doing so this time or any future election. So definitely encourage get out and vote too. So for sure.
Michael Harris, happy Valentine's Day. Thank you for sitting in on Council Chambers on the show today. I appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Hey, happy Valentine's to you. It's also my son's 13th birthday, so he's now a teenager, so lots to do today. But stay warm, everyone. Enjoy the winter. We're having a beautiful, snowy winter, so get out there and just know that, we at the region have our eyes focused on, delivering, those critical infrastructure items that people expect here in the community. And we'll be there to fight these tariffs and to ensure that we protect the good-paying jobs here in our community. So thanks, Larry.
You bet. And happy birthday to your son. That's terrific. Yeah. I remember when you bet. Michael Harris, our guest, he is Regional Councilor and Chair of the Budget Committee for Kitchener Finance Budget. And his son's 13th birthday today. Happy birthday. That's cool. I remember when my kids were adults, but you remember those milestone birthdays, like when they became a teenager or when they were old enough to drive or old enough to vote. I made them vote. I did. Get out and vote. This is Larry Fedoruk for Mike Farwell, 570 News Radio. Back in a moment. And for Mike Farwell today, I'm Larry Fedoruk. Mike is coming up after 10:30 on the coaches show because, of course, the only reason he's away is it's a long road trip with the Rangers, and he'll be on tonight, 6:30 for the pregame in Kingston, Rangers in Kingston. But again, coach's show with Mike Farwell and UC coming up just a few minutes' time, and then the other coach's show with Paul Fixter also coming up in our next half hour. I was thinking they should change the Atlantic Ocean to the Ocean of the Americas. What do you think about that? Is that a good idea? And then when we're annexed, Hudson's Bay could become the Gulf of Canada. Well, actually, we could do that ahead of time anyway. Hudson's Bay. Yeah, I know he found the bay, but somebody would have found it eventually anyway, don't you think? So, the Gulf of Canada. Why not? It's trending right now. It's the thing to do. Change the name of bodies of water. I like the Pacific Ocean, the Indian Ocean. It's near India. The American Ocean, instead of the Atlantic. Never cared for the name Atlantic. I think the Ocean of the Americas or the American Ocean would be, why not? Geez, don't give them ideas, I guess, right? My goodness. And I don't know if you heard this, but the Associated Press, we have the Canadian Press in Canada, which is kind of a service that provides news to a lot of news outlets who can't necessarily afford to, a smaller news outlet in Kitchener-Waterloo, but we're Rogers, so that's a little different. But let's say a small outlet somewhere in Red Deer, they would use Canadian Press because Canadian Press provides these services for people who can't have reporters out everywhere. Associated Press does that for the world. The Associated Press refused to call it the Gulf of America. And Trump banned the AP from press conferences in the Oval Office and in the White House because they're saying, well, they're suing. They're taking them to court over this. They're saying we're a World Press Association, and not every country recognizes your name change. So why are you blaming us? It's an odd story. Coach's Show with Mike Farwell. That's next on 570 News Radio.
Here's special guest host, Larry Fedoruk.
As you know, every day on the Mike Farwell Show between noon and 1 is the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour. It's one of my favorite segments when I'm filling in for Mike, and I think it has a little extra zing on a Friday. Am I right? Am I wrong? You'll tell me, I guess, on 12 o'clock when we get to the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour. That's coming up. Next hour, though, it's our Friday 4 panel. That starts just after 11 o'clock. And my guests, once again, I've hosted a few Friday 4 panels filling in for Mike, and I think the most of the time it's this team. I call them now my panel. My panel. It's a term of affection. Marjorie Ann Knight is going to be here. Philip Mills and Philip Molto, and yours truly make up the 4 on the Friday 4 panel. That is coming up between 11 and noon today, and we talk various topics. Of course, tariffs in the 51st state. We'll talk about that, the federal Liberal leadership, and everything that's going on there, provincial election. And then I also want to talk on the 4 panel, Valentine's Day v. Family Day. I never liked the way the timing of them was. If they introduced Family Day, it's always going to be very close to Valentine's Day and kind of interrupt the other, don't they? Well, anyway. It is time, though, for the Coach's Show, a weekly feature here on 570 News Radio. And with the Coach's Show, here's Mike Farwell.
The Kitchener Rangers start a 3-game road trip tonight in Kingston. As always, Friday mornings at this time, head coach Jussi Ahokas joins us for the Coach's Show. Jussi, back on Tuesday versus Oshawa, was it really maybe the mental side of the game that let your team down?
Yeah, we didn't start how we wanted. We didn't play in the level what you have to play against the top team. First period, third period, I thought we played really well. We didn't give up any chances for them. But that's what we need to do. We have to be ready. Kingston today, a really good team. We have to be dialed in, and you can't be 90%. You have to be 100% right away. And then you'll have a chance.
When you look back on that game on Tuesday, are you able now to maybe just say, at least we got a point out of it, because you were able to come back in the third period?
Oh, yeah, that's a point. Yeah, that was great. And that's good for the team, of course, that you can come back from playing 40 minutes of bad hockey and still you get a point. So, that, of course, that's positive. And the extra chances, we beat them in 5-on-5 chances. So it wasn't, but still, we, like all in all, we want to play a good 60 minutes, and that's still why we're doing the work, and we're all the time looking for that perfect 60, and that's when we can start playing really good hockey after that.
At this point of the season, do you start working on some of those finer details with the playoffs coming up now?
I would say we've kind of gone through the whole year. We go through things like all the time, but of course then it's a little bit more details again, and you're a little bit adding a little bit different stuff, like on face-off, you're a little bit changing power play, everything, just small adjustments, but all in all it has to be that how you played the whole season, that's how you want to play in the playoffs also, and then you have to have the basic line of your game is so strong that you don't have to change it.
You talk about Oshawa having been such a good team, and they're one of the favorites in the Eastern Conference. Does that give you an idea of how you stack up against some of the better teams in this league?
Oh yeah, it's of course they have 4 first-round NHL draft picks, and all in all they've been adding up. But we have a good team also, and so I haven't really thought of it that way. Like I always knew, like if we play every guy plays in their best, like we always have a chance. But we're a team, and we don't really have superstars. Maybe you could say Parsons our superstar, but otherwise we're a team, and that's when we play together. Then we can be together. We can be superstars. So that's how I see our team.
And is that what gives you the confidence, no matter what time of the game, you're putting out one line after another? You're always just rolling those 4 lines because as a team, they can all give you what you need.
Oh yeah, and well, of course, like last game, in some situations where when we were leading or we were chasing the lead, then we had to do a little bit changes. But but yeah, we're a 4-line team, and it gives us that we can play with good tempo, and then everybody knows in our team that they're involved and they're important, and I think that's a big strength for us.
You mentioned that Kingston is a tough game tonight. What do you have to do to be successful against this team, which can really score?
Well, you have to defend, of course. Parsons has to be on, but all in all, like we have to take away time and space, and we have to be dialed in our defensive details.
Thanks for this. Good luck in the game.
Thank you.
UC Ahokas, the head coach of the Kitchener Rangers, joins us every Friday morning at this time for the weekly Coaches Show. As I mentioned, we are on to a 3-game Eastern road trip this weekend, starting tonight in Kingston. It is off to Ottawa for a game Sunday afternoon against the 67s. And then on Monday, we'll pick up the Peterborough Petes on the way back home for a family day matinee at the Peterborough Memorial Centre. So the Frontenacs have been one of the better teams, especially since the trade deadline. They acquired 3 players from the defending Memorial Cup champion Saginaw Spirit who have fit in extremely well here in the Limestone City. And the team has been scoring in bunches. A big test for the Rangers tonight. Ottawa is not having its best season, but there are really no easy games in this league, especially when you're on the road for as long as the team is. We came in yesterday to play this game today. We'll travel to Ottawa tomorrow and then face the 67s on Sunday before heading back into Peterborough Sunday night to meet the Petes on Monday afternoon. You'll hear, of course, every game right here on your home of Kitchener Rangers hockey. And right after this quick timeout, Paul Fixter will join us for the other Coaches Show. And as we thank Larry Fedoruk for filling in on the Mike Farwell Show today, this is 570 News Radio.
Larry Fedoruk in for Mike Farwell on a Friday, but hey, you do get Mike and Paul. It's the other Coaches Show with Paul Fixter and Mike Farwell.
Well, even when we're on the road, we continue with the Friday morning tradition of the Coaches Show into the other Coaches Show, as Paul Fixter and I are on the road with the Rangers this weekend. Tonight, here in Kingston, we'll play Ottawa on Sunday and the Peterborough Petes on Family Day, Monday afternoon. And Fixie, I guess this is for guys like you and me who have been doing this for a little while and don't travel maybe as well as the young elite athletes that we travel with. We can look at it and say, just get us through this trip, and then it's all gravy from here.
Yeah, I'm actually looking forward to these 3 games, Mike. Teams that we don't get to see very much. Pretty good cities, like being in Kingston and Ottawa. Finish up in Peterborough on Family Day. But after that, it's gravy. Like, we've got 4 away games, all within an hour's drive. Owen Sound maybe a little bit further. So it's a nice schedule. It sets up really nicely for the Rangers after this trip. 8 home games and 4 away games. And they'll all mean something because we get closer to that game 69, which is game 1 of the playoffs.
As selfish as it is to talk about how much easier the travel is for us and what we're looking forward to, you just touched on it too, Paul. That's a good situation for the team to find itself in with the final 12 games, 8 of them on home ice. I think you probably couldn't design a schedule any better heading into the playoffs.
No, it's a wonderful schedule for the Rangers, and I think, Mike, the more times, opportunities you get to sleep in your own bed, have your routine around your house. We're creatures of habit. It's great. And, looking forward, the schedule, it's probably going to be Sarnia or Flint. If it is Sarnia, that's another pretty easy travel schedule for the Rangers if that's who it is. And Flint isn't so bad as well. So I think the Rangers are in a great spot. They've put themselves in a nice spot, probably in that three hole, and going to play whoever ends up in 6. So the team's in a real good spot. They've taken advantage of the schedule. They've got a real good road record. So they've done a wonderful job as this road trip continues, and I think they're just kind of fine-tuning everything as we get closer to the end of the season.
You talked about these cities we're visiting this weekend and how nice the cities are, which I would agree wholeheartedly. And we kind of got talking about this a week ago when we went to St. Catharines to play the Niagara Ice Dogs. An hour and 20 minutes, give or take, it took. Paul, it's really time in this league, and maybe with the talk of expansion and a new commissioner in place, we can look at rebalancing a schedule here.
And it's funny, Mike, I asked that question, you asked that question to others around the league, and everybody is in agreement with it. And I think if you really got to the fans, they would be in agreement with it too. This is a good hockey club here in Kingston, and Kitchener fans get to see them once unless they travel to Kingston. So it just... With travel now in the province of Ontario especially, it's easy. Like, we get around, everything's close to one another. Every city's close to one another, so it just makes sense. It's time. I think it would be a real refreshing taste for the league if we were able to do that, and I'm all for it. And it wouldn't be that hard to figure it out. And I think it can, if expansion is on the horizon, they should be thinking about this now as on a go-forward basis. And, you know, it's funny, when we were in Erie, Erie passes right through Niagara to play Kitchener or Owen Sound on all these teams, and they're in a different conference than the Niagara Ice Dogs, which they go right through St. Catharines all the time. So it only makes sense, Mike. And I think with Commissioner Crawford, he's very forward-thinking. This will be taken care of in the not too distant future.
You and I had the chance to chat a little bit last night as we began this road trip and reflected back on that Tuesday night game in Kitchener versus the Oshawa Generals. And that Oshawa team, Paul, is one that you think has got to be the odds-on favorite to come out of the East.
Well, everybody talks about Barrie, and I just really like Oshawa. They have big defense. Gibson has been a great addition for them. I thought Danford had a good game the other night. So their defense is very solid. And then up front, they're so explosive, Mike, with Ritchie and Seneca, even the Torrance, who got the game-winning goal in overtime. That was his 20th. I believe they have 8 players with 10 or more goals, and then some of those have, 30, 25 to 30. So they're a really balanced scoring team. Their speed. I think it's a nice hockey club. But, you look at Kingston here tonight. Kingston is 2 points out of first place. It is so tight. I see after last night that Brampton has moved ahead of Sudbury. Sudbury's down in 7th. So it's really tight. It's going to be really fun to watch the playoffs on the eastern side because a good team is going to be out in the first round. I don't think it'll be Oshawa. I really like Oshawa. I think they have a lot of depth, and I'm really impressed. They went to the finals last year, and that experience, Money in the Bank, as UC likes to call it, is that's something that these players, they want to get back there. The players that experienced that last year, because it's a lot of fun when you go that far.
In talking to UC Ahokas a moment ago, he feels differently or better, I suppose, today than he did immediately following the game on Tuesday night when he wasn't thrilled with the team's first 40 minutes because they were able to battle back and at least get a point. Considering how you feel, Paul, about that Oshawa team, what is this telling you about this Kitchener Rangers team, that they were able to battle back and at least get that point?
I think it tells a lot, Mike, and that's why I asked the question of UC after the game, was it a good test for your hockey club? And he didn't really give me the answer that I was looking for, but I think it is a good test for the hockey club. Rangers didn't have their best game, and in his words, they basically played 20 minutes of hockey. Played 20 minutes of hockey against a good hockey club and, could have won the game. So if you play 60 minutes or even 45 minutes, I think you have a really good chance of competing with them. And as I said during the broadcast, I'd love to see a Kitchener-Oshawa final because I'm impressed with Oshawa, but I'm really impressed with Kitchener as well. I think they're two really balanced, deep clubs that would give the fans a real nice entertainment in the finals. A long way to go before then, but I think it was a great test for Kitchener, and not playing their best game, they were able to generate a point out of it.
all the talk this week in the league has been about the really unfortunate story out of London with Cam Allen and a drinking and driving charge. We had Mad Canada on our broadcast on Tuesday night when Oshawa was in Kitchener, just to get some perspective from Mothers Against Drunk Driving. And if anybody thought that was going to disrupt the London Knights in any way, I was thinking about it when you mentioned last night's scores a moment ago. They go into Barrie on the road and they hang an 8 on the Colts. So things are just fine, I suppose, in London.
Doesn't it say something about the depth of the London Knights when, you take an NHL draft pick, a very good player, out of the lineup, and they're still able to generate that kind of offense. He's an offensive-minded player, no question about it. I think it says a lot about how good London is. But every team is beatable, no question about it. I think what it says, though, too, is the strength of the Western Conference. Barrie's supposed to be, Barrie is the top team in the Eastern side, and they get spanked at home. So I think the West is going to be, as much as we talk about the East and the good teams in the East and the balance within up and down the lineup, I think Kitchener, London, and Windsor are still, the Eastern teams are looking at those three teams and going, it's not going to be easy to get past the Western Conference.
Kitchener Rangers have a chance tonight to spoil a bit of a party for the Kingston Frontenacs as the Fronts are going for a franchise record 10th straight win at home.
Yeah, it'll be fun to end that party for Kingston here. This is a hockey club that's been around a long time, going all the way back to the old Kingston Canadian days. Haven't had a lot of success. They've had a lot of good players. They've had some good teams. They haven't had success. When you start measuring things like that, it says something about your success. That that's a big talking point. That 10 games, that's impressive, but there's not championship banners and those sorts of things like we have in the Memorial Auditorium. So I hope Kitchener can end that streak tonight, and it holds at 9, which is the current record.
Some way, somehow, Fixie, we'll find a way to fill our hours today and then hop into the David Schooley broadcast booth at 6:30 tonight.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it, Mike. I always enjoy this building and getting to see Jim Gilchrist and their coach. I know Manor really well, so it'll be fun game, and it'll be a good weekend. I just hope the weather cooperates for us, Mike.
Paul Fixter joins us every Friday morning for the Other Coaches Show as we're on the road with the Rangers this weekend. Tonight in Kingston, Sunday in Ottawa, and then Monday in Peterborough. And we make sure you get all of your Rangers information even when we're on the road. Thanks again to Larry Fedoruk for filling in on the Mike Farwell Show this morning. This is 570 News Radio.
Don't forget, 12 o'clock Talkback Hour. It's all you, whatever you want to talk about between noon and 1 today. Well, every weekday on the Mike Farwell Show, but Fridays especially fun on the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour. I'm Larry Fedoruk, filling in for Mike Farwell. I'm also, I guess, number 4 on the Friday 4 panel. I will, in fact, introduce the other 3 members of the panel, and we'll talk about some of the big stories of the week. And you know what they are. They're elections, they're tariffs, but we're also going to talk a little Valentine's Day and Family Day and all of that. It's the Friday 4 panel, and it is next here on 570 News Radio.
Here's special guest host, Larry Fedoruk.
And I think the number of times that I've guest hosted a Friday 4 panel, I've guest hosted with this panel the most. And I like them the most. Welcome to the panel today, the Friday 4 panel, Marjorie Ann Knight, Family Outreach, House of Friendship. How are you, Marjorie Ann?
I'm doing all right. All right. Snow aside.
Yeah, snow aside. Exactly. I live near baseball and soccer fields, and with all the snow on it, it's when the sun comes out, it is so bright out there with all that snow out there when we do have sun, which we have a little of today. So
yeah, my problem is getting up and down my driveway. The other night it took me 3 tries to get up the driveway.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I feel for you. I hear you. Philip Mills is here, CEO of Habitat for Humanity in Waterloo region. Philip Mills, how are you?
Doing great. It's Friday of a long weekend. How bad could it be?
Yeah. We had some snow days. I think there's a PA day and then a family day. So the kids are loving it, I think.
I was going to say, it sounds like a fantastic stretch for children and a trying stretch for all the parents who now have their children at home.
Philip Malto is here, Kitchener former Ward 9 candidate. Philip Malto, how are you?
I'm great. I'm one of those people loving this winter. I have friends who snowmobile, ski, ice fish, and this is the winter they've been waiting for 10 years. So everybody going out this long weekend, family weekend, play in the snow, have fun, play safe, but it's going to be a great weekend for you.
I was talking to David Phillips yesterday, climatologist, Environment Canada, and he's up in the Barrie area, I think now, and all the extra snow they've had up there. But that's ski country, and I mean, good for them. Good for them. I think we lost your sweater in the shot there. I think Philip put up a sweater to, what do you got there? Maple Leafs jerseys in his Zoom shot. So we are.
It's a vintage Dave Keon jersey, trying to bring back some of the old nostalgia.
Dave Keon. Wow. That's a childhood hero for me, I'll tell you, watching the Leafs when I was a kid. I almost hate to start the four panel today with this because it's just, we're already on burnout, but important topic, and it's tariffs. And Philip Malto, we were just talking to you. Let's start with you on the threat of tariffs. It weighs on everybody. Is it weighing on you?
In two ways: the reality of it and all the misinformation and misunderstanding, starting with the person who's initiated all, who doesn't even know how tariffs even work and how long these deals have been in place, to just suddenly come in and say, walk in on a Monday and say, folks, we're doing a whole different thing. I mean, the world is just shaking their head, not just Canada, not just Mexico. The entire world is just shaking their heads at how this changes the way we do trade with each other, and just the misinformation about what can be done and how it can be done and who it can be done with. It's just created panic across the world, globally, economically, and here in Canada. And a lot of innocent people, both here and the United States, Mexico, and globally, are going to be affected by one person who's initiating stuff who doesn't even understand how it works.
Yeah, I've done some deep diving into this myself just to learn more. And you're exactly right. It is a very complicated world economic system based on world trade. And I don't think he has a clue what he's talking about. I noticed on the Zoom, Marjorie Ann, you're nodding in agreement. How are you feeling about all of this these last few weeks?
I mean, it's very frustrating, to say the least. But I also realized that in 2018, was it, that he was playing the same cards. He came after our steel and came after our soft lumber then also, which strangely enough ended up in this deal that we have now, that he's now carrying on about. There are definitely ways of dealing with this. I think that what I hear across the board about a Team Canada approach seems to me to make the most sense. I just wish that our premier wasn't sitting down in Washington holding out for somebody to meet with him, when he could easily be reaching out to governors who their state depend on our business. Why don't we talk to the governors and say, look, man, this is going to affect you same way it's affecting us. Let them go and talk to the Orange Wonder. Listen, if we can concentrate on what we have to do here to protect our people and to shore up what we need to shore up, work on our food sovereignty and that kind of thing, talk to the governors. Let the federal government speak to Mr. Trump.
Right.
And the trade people, let them do their job and let's do our jobs. But everybody needs to be on the job for this.
Speaking of Orange Wonder, I heard Tangerine Tycoon also, and Tangerine Tyrant. So if you want to drop that in. So
tangerine is such a wonderful fruit. Why?
Yes. Why? Philip Mills, your thoughts?
I think I think there's these times, these difficult times and these trying times, like that. It's a good opportunity to reflect. Like, I think this says a lot to us as a country and as a province or a space to be like, okay, how do we not be so reliant on one space and one thing? I think you kind of think of, old brands and businesses. You're like, hey, you might need to look at the way you've done work. It's worked well for a long time, but you're vulnerable. And I think this shows a vulnerability of Canada and a vulnerability of Ontario and our province to say, look, the States has been a great partner, and there's no reason to break that. But also on the same token, we can't be so reliant on one partner where the totality of our own sort of economy rests on that one space, because I think that does become precarious. And so, does a unified Canada and a Canada approach, shared kind of Canada approach, give us an opportunity to say, how do we as a country work well together? How do we work more diversified across our country and other countries and other sort of trade partners, realizing that we may not always be in a position. Like stability is something that we've been lucky to be. Like, I'm not that old, so I haven't been through a lot of economic upheavals or the sort of instability you see. But if you look back through history, like this stuff happens, and people who were friends are no longer friends, and trade partners, and that stuff changes. And so how do we be forward thinking and progressive about what does the future of Canada's trade and the future of Ontario need to look like, so that if something problematic happens in the States or with a new partner that we find, something problematic happens there, how do we be resilient enough to withstand those things so that we're not, at the beck and call or at the whim of somebody else, but in control of our own future? And I think this is really about a question of how do we create a space where we're in control of our own future versus having to, respond and defend.
And we should start off with some intra-province trade. Because we're not even doing it with ourselves.
That's come up a few times. Just let's get that fixed while we're at it, because as the goal line goes, it should be easier to buy a bottle of wine from BC than it is from Italy or what have you. Wine is only one example, but you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. We'll continue the discussion. It's the Friday 4 panel. This is 570 News Radio. Back in a moment. I'm Larry Fedoric in for Mike Farwell with Philip Mills, Philip Malto, and Marjorie Ann Knight, the Friday 4 panel. And we were talking tariffs and trade. Gosh, that could just go all morning and the rest of the afternoon and the weekend. But it kind of goes into our next thing, because we were discussing the role of the federal government. So we have kind of a lame duck prime minister right now, in that he's trying to do his job, in my opinion. But people are looking at him going, well, you're gone in a month, basically. So thanks for coming, but we'll just wait to talk to the next guy. Could this happen at a worse time? The whole federal liberal leadership and the way our system works, that's our government, that's our prime minister, whoever they pick, in this time when we need a federal and a Team Canada approach. I mean, anybody jump in. I'm not even going to pick anybody to start. Just start.
Well, I could jump in here. Like, I guess sometimes I'm of two minds when it talks about, like, the federal leadership race. Like, I'm like, this is really important. Another part of me is like, it's not as though when, government was sitting and Trudeau was, in place and he hadn't, said he was going to resign, that the federal government was doing all the things we wanted it to do. Like, they're a minority government that wasn't, and the other parties, like, they weren't all working well together. So the idea that, like, this is ground our government to a halt, or things aren't happening that ought to be happening. It's not as though when they were all sitting there yelling at each other, saying all the things they were saying in all of the question periods, that, like, we had a really functioning federal government that was doing lots of good work and I think pushing towards what was best for Canada. You had the opposition fighting with those that were in power. It was a minority government. Like, not a lot was getting passed and moved anyway. And so I don't know that things have really changed that much now. It's like, hey, we have this leadership race. They'll pick who they want to pick, and an election will come sometime between now and October. But, like, if stuff wasn't prorogued and Trudeau hadn't said he was going to resign, it's not as though I don't think a lot would be all that different, because this group wasn't working well together anyway. Conservatives were actively trying to oppose whatever the sitting minority was doing. NDP had said, we're not going to work with the government right now. And so the thing kind of grit itself to a stop. It wasn't Trudeau resigning that has stopped this. This thing wasn't working and was ground to a halt year before any of this happened.
Yeah. Big. It is the flaw of the parliamentary system. I mean, and minority governments historically are supposed to be the time when a lot gets done for more people, because coalitions are formed and one side has to work with the other. That's happened in previous minority governments. You're right. It hasn't happened this time around.
I think that everybody has gotten suddenly quiet in the federal arena. Nobody's jumping up, and because everybody's plans have been crushed by this. And I think if it's one thing that they all need to reflect on and look at, is the fact that if they do not work together on a plan for Canada, we are going to fail. So it's no use bad mouthing and beating on each other. We don't need that right now. Trudeau is out talking to, EU and talking to other partners and trying to get people together. I wish I was seeing other members of all the parties doing the same thing, showing leadership, because this is what we need to see at this time. And here we have in Ontario a premier with 2 years left on his mandate suddenly needs a new mandate because he needs to, deal with tariffs. Tariffs are federal. We need to look after our own here and be a part of the team of Canada that pushes forward. And this is, just my reflections of what I'm looking at every day.
Marjorie pulled up a couple words that I love, team and leaders, because we've all seen those inspirational posters in the workplace. Leaders lead, they don't push, they don't, but at what point does the leader bring his team in or her team in or their team in and say, this person's doing this person's doing that? Right now, south of the border, one person is doing everything and nobody challenges it. In the province, Doug Ford seems to run education, health, everything on his own. We don't know who the ministers of agriculture, because Doug takes over. So which of these federal candidates is going to say, I am a leader, I am a strong person, but I'm also going to build a team around me, especially a team now that is fragmented because some are following this candidate or that candidate. When candidate C gets in, well, what about the people who supported A, B, and D? Are they going to be able to follow in on this new team to run Canada or go into an election and see what kind of a government we have in 6 months from now? So I think the whole team and leader, how do we perceive a leader? Are they going to build a team, or are they that person that's going to take on Trump single-handedly like an emperor or, from the old Roman Empire? I'm Emperor Nero, follow me. I'm just get behind me. I've got this. Or is this somebody who's going to bring a whole team of talented people from all aspects to fix agriculture, the environment, defense, trade, economy? Is this person going to build an actual team that we can respect going into election, or are we just going to be a fragmented, disgruntled voters in 6 months?
I want to pick up on that, but we're just going to go to break here for our traffic and weather and some messages here. It's the Friday 4 panel on 570 News Radio. Larry Fedoruk in for Mike Farwell, Marjorie Ann Knight, Philip Mills, Philip Malto. We were just talking about team. Generally speaking, a team that would be working as a Team Canada against tariffs and things like that. Whatever happened to this? I mean, they're there. This economic team that was put together that included a Jean Charest and a Rachel Notley and others from various political backgrounds and things like that in various areas of expertise. I guess, what are they doing? Are they still working? Do we know? They must be.
I hope so. Yeah. I really hope so, because there is no one person that is going to be able to do this. And we need to make use of the expertise that we have out there. And by expertise, I don't mean all the rich people who live in the States who have an opinion on what Canada should be doing. I mean the people who live here, work here, slog through everything with us here, who have experience. We need them. We need them now. No one person can do everything. Absolutely not. Not at this time.
I agree 100%. There's decades of people who worked on the Auto Pact, the free trade, NAFTA, free trade deals, GST. Those people have a wealth of knowledge. Agree or disagree with what they did, the knowledge base on which they drew from for those decisions and all those contacts, as I said before, it's like a company that's got retired staff members. They may be 73 years old, but they were there during the 70s, 80s, 90s, the rebuildings of companies. Same with politics. You've got people who've got incredible depth of knowledge and experience. You can agree or disagree with what they're saying, but at least they've got some facts and some firsthand knowledge to base an opinion or a policy on.
I mean, Justin used to call Brian Mulroney, they would talk, which I always thought was kind of a good thing. He would call Jean Chrétien, but he would call Brian as well.
As long as it wasn't Ben Mulroney, then we'd have even more stress.
Well, I think the struggle though here, Phil, is that there's a bit of an assumption that there aren't moving goalposts on this issue. honestly talk about relationships with the states and the people who are helping us to navigate our relationship with the states, whether it be a federal, provincial level, that the reasons and rationale change all the time, and even some of the things that are causing whatever these concerns are south of the border don't seem to be rooted particularly in facts. And so I guess that's part of the problem, is that you're not it's not as if this seems like, okay, so this is the issue, this trade agreement's terrible. Well, Trump's the one that negotiated it in the first place. And so we've got these kind of let's go get the people who are around the table. This guy, what and that's where I think that sometimes are there people working on this? Absolutely. Should people work on this? Totally. But it's really hard to find a reasonable forward facing solution when the goalposts get moved all the time. Well, this was about this, and now it's about that, and now it's about this. And I don't think that we really know, and I don't think it's necessarily transparent. Maybe the government knows more than we do, but I don't think that there's a real transparent what is happening and why, because it just changes every time. It's well, maybe not that. Maybe it's this. And so I think for our leaders, it's awfully hard to navigate a world where nothing's clear and obvious.
Well, but then this is when I say it's what are we working on? Are we working on him and his priorities, or are we working on what we need here? Are we working on the trade deals that we need to foster with other people? Are we looking at our intra-trade between all our provinces? Are we looking at shoring up what we need to shore up here? Are we looking at building industry here? Are we looking at manufacturing here? Are we looking at finding ways to invest in for instance, we do so much in the tech world. Are we doing that? What are we doing for us? Not so much reacting to them, but making sure that what we are doing is keeping us in a position that we can survive that.
Our planned topics today were the tariffs and the federal Liberal leadership race and the provincial election. And it's funny, but they're all just tying together and flowing together, which they naturally are. So we'll just continue, maybe on a provincial election level on our Friday 4 panel. More in a moment, 570 News Radio.
Here's special guest host, Larry Fedoric.
And with me on this fine Friday, Valentine's Day, is from Kitchener, former Ward 9 candidate Philip Malto, the CEO of Habitat for Humanity, Waterloo Region, Philip Mills, and family outreach worker House of Friendship, Marjorie Ann Knight. As I mentioned, all these things we were going to talk about are just all flowing together, I guess, as they are because of tariffs and Team Canada and on the federal Liberal level and the provincial election level. But I kind of want to focus on the provincial election. Marjorie Ann, I'll start with you because you already kind of mentioned it. It's been a pet peeve of mine, and that we have a provincial election campaign where the supposedly lead candidate is campaigning in Washington, D.C. for some reason. And I mean, I guess he has to be there. I don't know. Does he? What do you think of the campaign so far?
There. Yeah. I have never been so embarrassed as I listened, I should say, to an interview asking Mr. Ford, well, who is he going to be speaking to? And his reply was, well, they know we're here, so there isn't even a plan as to what you're going to do over there. You're just hanging out hoping somebody will speak to you. Listen, buddy, everybody else is here campaigning through ice and snow and slogging through it, going to panels, doing all this stuff. And he is sending greetings from Washington, D.C. over tariffs. What is he doing here? He had a mandate for 2 more years. 2 more years. And he suddenly needed a new mandate now? He should be here working that mandate, trying to work with people in Ontario to figure out how we make ourselves tariff-proof, how to protect ourselves, how to grow what we have so that we can survive this.
Has anybody seen the Ontario ads that run on CNN and a lot of American networks? Ontario, your trading partner. It bothers me because if it's a one-team Canada approach, why is Ontario saying, yeah, but you trade with us? It's kind of like ignoring Alberta, BC, the Maritimes, Quebec.
This is not the team. This is not a team. This is not how Canada is going to need to react to this foolishness that's going on. Ontario cannot do it by itself. It cannot.
I agree with Marjorie. This is not a team. This is not what's doing best for Canada, the citizens of Canada, the workers of Canada. This is all, this. A lot of this is all about people positioning themselves for elections. Doug's doing it for his Ontario election. The federal Liberals are doing it for their upcoming election. Everybody's trying to place themselves to position themselves politically and not doing what's best for Canada, what's best for the industry, so it could potentially get seriously hurt depending what province you're on, different areas. And so I look at it, it's unfortunate they're not doing this for what's best for Canada. It's a whole bunch of political jockeying and playing going on here. And we're, right now we are in a provincial election, and our local candidates, some of them aren't showing up for candidate, meet the candidate nights or debates. Where's this other party? Where are these people? Doug should be focusing on Ontario right now. It is not. Trade is a federal area, not his. If he wants to meet with the others, with the Prime Minister, great. Ontario's in a mess right now. Where is his candidates? Like, you hear nothing about his candidates. It's all about Doug, the leader. What about the candidates? What about other ridings? Mm-hmm. It's a taking advantage of a international bad situation to propel his personal ego, and I think it's just wrong.
Philip Mills.
So this might make me sound 1,000 years old, which from time to time I do when I'm talking with you folks. But like, there's a part of me that says, like, I wonder what's gone on with us as an electorate where these things don't seem to matter. Like, if you're not out campaigning, so Premier Ford's clearly not campaigning in his neck of the woods because he's not in his neck of the woods. If we've got folks that aren't showing up to debates, and that doesn't impact the outcome, like, what does that say about us? Like, I think there's something interesting about what is going on with an electorate that stuff isn't. So have we, has the Conservatives understood, maybe better than others, how voters have changed or connecting with people has changed, that actually isn't the way that we as an electorate interact with or care about our politics, or like something is different than it used to be, because there was these ideas, and you see this across, I think, broader on politics, that like that would have killed this person's chances years ago and you could have never gotten away with, but you can today. And so I sometimes wonder if we're just judging by old rules or haven't really understood that today in the environment we are, this isn't the stuff that drives success. This isn't the stuff that drives winning. And whether that's good or bad is another part of that. Like, maybe it ought, but it clearly isn't. If, the prospective winners and of the coming election don't need to do all the things we always kind of thought you need to do to win an election, then maybe those aren't the right things. And that's, I think, was a reflective back on us as an electorate to say, like, I guess we don't care about that stuff the way we used to. We've changed. And, whether I like that or not, or I think that we should have responded differently to that, and we should have to get up and talk to me and hear these things. It seems like a cohort of people don't care about that. And so I don't know what that means for us or our future, but I think it's a really noticeable shift, which then is where it makes me sound like an old man yelling at clouds, being like, back in the day it was right, and now I don't know if it's not right. It's just different. And maybe that's something for us to kind of reconcile with.
More people don't vote than vote. Most people do not vote. There is almost no political education. People don't understand our political system. They don't understand who does what, what's responsible for what. The apathy is frightening. It's absolutely frightening. So 30-40% of the electorate votes. And that's what we get. And
it doesn't seem like there's
something has
to fix
to
that.
change. It has to change.
Does it? Like, what's the incentive to fix that if you're winning? And I think this is like one of the oddities of our entire structure is that if you're winning and this is working to your advantage, like, I think back to years ago, there was talk about changing at a federal level, first past the poll and some of those sort of things. But if you're winning in the current system, why would you create a new system? And so there are disconnected goals and outcomes here where, how do we get lots of people involved politically? Well, the people who are benefiting from them not being involved politically, the ones that have the power to change it, they're probably not going to. And so I think we just have this thing where the world of our politics has changed kind of right before our eyes, and I don't think many of us know what to do with it.
Yeah, because we have non-binding referendums. So even if people rise up and say, yes, we want it to change, they still don't have to change it. So they can say, yeah, well, we did this referendum like you wanted, but they don't have to act on it. And yes, there needs to be a change in the way we do things. First past the post, we all know it's not the way to be. But as long as they're winning, they will hold on to it with 2 arms and 2 legs.
Great discussion, panel. Sincerely, what a great discussion. Friday 4 panel and more in a moment. 570 News Radio. I'm Larry Fedoruk in for Mike Farwell with Marjorie Ann Knight, Philip Mills, and Philip Malto. It's the Friday 4 panel this week on Valentine's Day. Happy Valentine's Day. We'll talk more about that in a moment, but we're talking about the provincial election, the campaign. You know, the old saying, politicians don't talk to the people, they talk to the people who vote. And if they can find that 20, 30, 40% that vote, then those who don't vote, be damned, they're not even talking to you. They don't even care about it.
That's so true. I mean, really, in the last election, there was no real platform except for Buck-a-Bear. How do you run on Buck-a-Bear?
Well,
And we didn't even really get that either. But anyway, but, you know, that is, you know, but people expect things to happen and expect things to change. And it just keeps running through my mind that, you know, the definition of insanity, where you keep doing the same thing over and over and expect a different result. We're not getting different results. We're getting the same old. And it's the same 30, 40% that vote. Same other people who say, oh, my vote won't change anything. And we're just in the weeds.
I don't know what changes it. I guess the system has to change, but I don't know that it will. But hey, you know, in Doug Ford's defense, a spa is kind of like healthcare.
You know, I could come right through this computer right now.
Oh my, it's getting aggressive now.
But only if I was sick.
Valentine's Day, Family Day weekend, and they're fighting.
More on a spa than he spent on healthcare or education. I mean, honestly, whose healthcare? It must be his, because the rest of us can't afford it. And he's taken away from us, you know, what was public lakefront, beautiful community grounds for a spa. Not even a Canadian spa.
In this hour, we've been talking about politics provincially and federally. And I remember back to high school days when we had grade 13 and, you know, Canadian politics, and we were taught and to think about, who do you vote for? Do you vote for your candidate, for your province, for a party, for the candidate in your area? Do you look at the issues, or do you look at potential issues? Do you look at the leader and say, right now, trade is the biggest problem? What happens if there's a conflict? Is international defense of our ability to defend ourselves or be involved in the United Nations? Will it be an environmental disaster? We look at an environmental like we had 2 years ago with big fires. So people will look, say, who am I voting for? And why? Is it the candidate? Is it a party, the party leader? Is it the issues of the day? Because a year or two later, we all look back and reflect, and maybe I should have, or maybe I shouldn't have, or maybe I should have just got off my reclining couch and voted and tried to make a difference. If I don't like for the candidates, maybe there's an independent candidate or a party I never would have thought of. Or who are you voting for and why? And what do you want?
And you were taught to investigate and research and find out what you can, ask questions, do what you need to do. Yes, all of these things. And what happened to that education that taught people to do this?
Is it that, or is that the world's just gotten so complicated? And like, it'd be great to be able to talk about the impending tariffs and to research all of those things. But like, groceries are really hard and I can't afford my rent. So I'm going to go focus my energy on those things. Because we have a home, I'm stable. I come home from work, I have 3 young boys, I'm exhausted. And so the ability to spend the time, like I sometimes wonder how much of this, you know, our lack of engagement in politics is rooted in, like, the world is complicated. We, you know, from whatever, social media to everything else, we are inundated constantly. There is no downtime, there is no rest. And at a certain point, I'm also supposed to be somehow, you know, deeply understanding of international politics and international trade to know who is the better party to say, like, at a certain point, I think some people are like, I don't know, I don't have time for this. I got to go figure out how I'm going to pay for the car repairs and, you know, pay my mortgage. And I think part of the apathy we see is this belief that, like, it doesn't matter. They're all terrible. And even if they're not, I don't have time for this because my actual life is too complicated. And so I don't know. I researched
that, but Zelda 23 is coming out tonight. I got to get on Zelda 23. Yeah.
Oh,
the world is too small. You really are inundated with all kinds of information. But then, as I say to people, what is your interest? What is it that you need? What is happening in your life? Because what's happening in your life is what should be important to you. That you can't pay your rent, that you can't find somewhere to live, that you can't afford groceries, that your kids are eating junk food all the time because you can't afford fresh fruit or vegetables. All of these kinds of issues there. personal issues, and people need to understand that politics should be personal to them. They should want to vote in their own best interest. What is it that you want to see, and who is going to give that to you, or who's going to think the same way you think, who has your values? And it's hard with the noise that surrounds you from the internet and you're hearing about everything that happens everywhere in the world. How do you tune it out and look at what you need? But that's what I tell people. What is it that you need provided for you, or help with, or the direction you want to see your community go into? That's the important part. And then you really need to know who you're voting for then. So it will take work on each person's part, but what do you want for your community? What do you want for your city? What do you want for your province? What do you want for your country? At some point, you have to take responsibility for how you achieve that. And that means that you have to vote.
My mini revelation was that every candidate, whether it be federal, provincial, or a regional councillor or a local councillor, has the same job, and it's to work locally for a constituent.
Yes.
And I don't know why that finally hit home after all these years, but so you're a federal MP, but you're still, maybe you don't have to be concerned about the stop sign on the corner, but there is a local issue that's involving your constituent that you have some ability to address or work on behalf of.
And you all, at all the levels, need to work together to fix what's going on in your corner of the world. That's why you are being elected, because you're supposed to be doing the work for your community, for your city.
The public service, and I wish, to your point, Philip, that it was talked about more in schools these days. I don't know that it isn't, but I don't think it is. But nevertheless, we'll pick it up in a moment here on our Friday 4 panel, 570 News Radio. Back in a moment.
Yeah.
I'm Larry Fedoruk. In the waning moments of our Friday 4 panel, it's been an active one today with Marjorie Knight, Philip Mills, Philip Malto. Happy Valentine's Day, everyone. I didn't say that off the top.
Happy Valentine's Day to you too.
You know, they introduced Family Day a few years ago, third Monday, I guess, in February. And it's always going to be kind of around Valentine's Day. It seems to, it doesn't conflict. I don't know how to put it. I'm just like, we have two occasions here and nobody really pays attention to Family Day. A lot of companies, it's optional. They don't even give it to you. It's, I don't know, whatever. What about Valentine's? Anybody have any special plans?
It's 364 days of the year, not just a day. So don't make up for it in one purchase at the mall.
There we go.
And for Family Day, for Family Day Monday, the world's a crazy place right now with the topics that we talk about internationally, globally, locally. Family Day, spend time with your family. You know, focus on them.
Yep.
I think you got it right there, Phil. That's the right answer. You know, all of this talk, control the things you can, which is being good to and present with your family. So I think that's what we'll be doing this weekend.
Keep the cookie jar high and out of sight.
I'm shivering in my boots. My granddaughter keeps saying something about going tobogganing. I don't know, man.
Skip the toboggan.
It will be time spent with her. That much I can say.
I love toboggan. It's just they don't have a ski lift. They don't have a sled lift.
Exactly.
It's the climbing back up. Yeah.
I'm sure somebody on Instagram or TikTok has figured it out that you could find some sort of a makeshift with the back end of a truck sort of ski lift option if you really want one, Larry.
Just some pulley. You pull me back up the hill because, you know, come on. Well.
Yes. I would be there for that. Yes.
See, that would make
the trek back up the hill, and you have to carry for you and the kid. Man, listen, man, that is tough stuff for me.
Now, I don't want to get all serious again, but you're talking about controlling what you can. I'm badly paraphrasing Philip Mills there, but somebody talked the other day about everybody has to take an oath to never give up. And I'm kind of looking at that now as my own personal little oath that I want to take, to not give up in my own way, to say, oh, well, it's never going to change. To hell with it. Why try? Why bother? To still kind of believe. I'm getting kind of spiritual here. I don't mean to, but, to kind of believe and know that there's still a lot of good people out there trying to do the right thing. And maybe that's what I should be doing too, day to day, whether it's as small or big as I can make it.
Light will overcome the darkness, as people have said, through 2 world wars, depressions, and insanity. At the end of it, somehow the light comes out like it is now. The days are getting longer. The sun's coming out. As dark as the days get on, in the planet, eventually it turns around. Somehow it does.
There are good people in the world. I meet them every day when I'm struggling with families and having nowhere to go, and people step up and do things. There are good people out there. And yes, what is the option? Either you keep going or you roll over and die. And to me, that's not an option.
You mentioned, Marjorie, there a lot of people took their $200 Doug Ford check and just sent it to you at the House of Friendship.
They did. A lot of people contacted me and sent me money to say, where this is needed, please distribute. And so I did. And it's really wonderful.
Let's stop on that note, on a positive note. And I thank you all. I hope you have a wonderful Valentine's Day and a great Family Day weekend. And you guys, as I said, you're on fire today. It's been a great panel. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you. See you next time.
Have a great weekend, everyone. Enjoy the snow.
You bet. Philip Malto there, Ward 9 candidate, former Ward 9 candidate, Kitchener. Philip Mills, CEO, Habitat for Humanity, Waterloo Region. Marjorie Ann Knight, reach out worker or outreach worker, what he reaches out to, for the House of Friendship on our Friday 4 panel. Thank you all again.
Have a great weekend.
I'm Larry Fedoruk in for Mike Farwell. Coming up next, it's all about you. It's the daily 12 o'clock Talkback Hour. Friday's always a little more fun on the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour, just because it's Friday. 12 o'clock Talkback Hour next here on 570 News Radio.
Here's special guest host, Larry Fedoruk.
Take out the papers and the trash, or you don't get no spending cash. If you don't scrub that kitchen floor, you ain't gonna rock and roll no more.
Don't talk back.
Please talk back. Please talk back. 12 o'clock Talkback Hour. It's up to you. I'll repeat the numbers. They should be programmed into your phone. If not, 519-570-2545, 1-800-570-5715, or star 570 on your cell. What do you want to talk about this hour? It's the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour, and we're going to start with Jersey Bill. Jersey Bill, welcome to 570 News Radio once again.
Oh, great. Well, nice to talk to you, Larry. You know what? I've been thinking about Trump and everything that's happening, and to tell you the truth, it seems to be the only thing that's really going to limit him. It's not so much the actions against him right now, because he seems to just want to say nothing matters except what I say. But I think what's really going to affect him, and you could see it even with what's occurring in the Ukraine crisis, and that is that he seemed to have said a lot of things that were pro-Russia. But now they had to walk that back, because I think even his own coalition, there are still some of those old cold warriors that won't allow him to go that far. They won't allow him to cut a deal. Now, the thing is, if it's totally transactional, and if Russia says, hey, give us everything we want and we'll make you even richer than you are today, and he does the same thing with China, it's really, the sad thing is that both that transactional part, which will benefit only him, and also this idea that he comes out with some crazy plan like the Gaza thing, but then has to walk it back. And so that essentially you're left with absolutely no policy at all, just his ravings. And this will, I think it also goes through this, the way he's just screwing around with international trade and the tariffs. It just, the whole thing together is just making America weaker. Because at the core of it, we don't have a rational person running our affairs. And, of course, America being weaker doesn't bode well for the rest of the world either.
I would agree with that. Jersey Bill, great call, man. Great. Thanks a lot for the call. It's hard to kind of analyze this irrational man, Donald Trump, but I think one thing is that he's looking at now is legacy. He wants to leave this legacy. Some have said he wants to win the Peace Prize. He wants to settle the Middle East and Russia, Ukraine, and wants to, can you imagine? Well, couldn't imagine him as president, and it happened. So I shouldn't say I can't imagine him winning the Nobel Peace Prize, but he wants legacy. And if these legacy plans he has for himself don't work or don't seem to contribute to his legacy, I think he'll just drop them. I think his interest, it's self-interest. I think that's all it is. So, we'll see. I was listening to a political strategist, or excuse me, a military strategist the other day, and said the one thing that Putin didn't have that smart military people have is they have a fallback plan on any military insurgency or attack or war. You always have a fallback plan, and he never had one because he didn't think he needed one. And the whole idea now is to try and find him one, so that they can settle this somehow somewhat amicably and peacefully. I don't know if that's a strategy or not, but it's what I've heard. Kyle, go ahead. You're on 570 News Radio.
Hello. So the other day there was a really good topic on the Rob Snow show after Mike Farwell show about if we came into a war, would we fight for Canada? And I said yes. And Joe, who I respect a lot, called in after and said, well, what does I respect what Kyle says, but what does it mean to be Canadian? And I wrote down some things because I thought it was a very good question, because I don't let Trudeau define what a Canadian is. I think I personally define my own what a Canadian is, and this is what it is. It means bumping into or when you go to the ATM machine and you bump into somebody and you say, I'm sorry. It means going to Tim Hortons, because going to Tim Hortons is not just somewhere to get a coffee, but it's a personality trait on who is being Canadian. It means that you're not just owning one pair of coat, but you're owning many coats because you don't know what the weather is going to be. You could be, in the springtime, you could be wearing a sweater in -20, and in the afternoon, you could be in shorts and a T-shirt. Let's also not forget that being Canadian means having a $12 bag of milk and complaining about it, but explaining to your American friends down south what bag milk actually is. Oh, and also one more thing, being Canadian means it's not just about saying sorry, but it also in a bad or mean way, but also means saying sorry after you get done fighting the guy and spending 5 minutes in the penalty box after a hockey game. Thank you very much, my friend. Have a good weekend and happy Valentine's Day.
You as well, Kyle. Thank you. Interesting. And I would agree with those things, but I also, because I just did this, just thought it out, wrote it out in a podcast called Beware of Patriotism, because I don't like the word patriotism. Now, and again, words, but words matter. Splitting hairs, some might say. When you get into patriotism has never been our thing. We can love Canada, we can be proud Canadians, but we don't think of ourselves as patriots the way Americans seem to have a requirement that you be a patriot. But when you get into patriotism and you get into those definition of what it means to be Canadian, and Kyle, those were great. Those were great, and I agree with them. But everybody will have a definition. And a lot of people don't want to respect another person's definition. And some of those definitions are a little out there. Like, to be a Canadian, you have to stand for the anthem and salute the flag. Okay, sure, yeah. You should be born here. See, now I know. Or you should be white, or you should be Christian, or you should be... Somebody said the other day online, said bilingualism is Canada's DEI project. And I'm like, wow, boy, you know nothing about Canada's history. And how these two peoples founded this country. And which is why we have two official languages. Well, that's the very short version, but you know what I'm saying. So then you just get into arguments and debates about what it means to be Canadian. And that's a tough one. When instead of bumping into somebody and saying you're sorry or getting a Tim's or whatever, So it's hard because we can be proud Canadian. I guess my point is we can be proud Canadians and love our country and not have to be absolutely flag-waving patriots. As a matter of fact, the more vigorously somebody starts to fly the flag and hide behind it and drape themselves around it, I get a little nervous when it gets that aggressive. Agree, disagree? Want to talk about something else? That's what the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour is about. Whatever you want to talk about, we'll return with more of your calls in a moment. 570 News Radio. I'm Larry Fedoruk. I'm in for Mike Farwell today. Mike's on the road with the Rangers. Catch him tonight at 6:30 with Paul Fixter for the pregame as the Rangers visit Kingston. And, of course, there will be no Mike Farwell show on Family Day Monday, but I'll return on Tuesday, and then Mike back in the slot on Wednesday. There's your lineup for the next few days for this time of day on 570 News Radio. Let's get to more of your calls. Here's Matt. Matt, go ahead. You're on the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour.
Okay, right now we have a superpower threatening us. Why? And we can't defend ourselves. Question: why is our Navy in Argentina and Bermuda not in Canadian home waters looking for drug ships, Chinese ships, or Russian ships? We can't defend ourselves. Why is our Navy not in home waters?
I don't know. I mean, I guess in past that's not how we've assigned our Navy.
I asked the question of a guy in the Navy yesterday, and he says, we are out doing political diplomacy. Why are our shores undefended?
Well, I mean, I don't know, Matt, other than they're not under attack. We're not under military attack by the United States right now. And should we line up our ships as a show of force right now? Isn't that a show of aggression?
I don't think so. I think they should be in home waters. And being that the Americans are complaining that we can't defend ourselves, they're not up here looking for foreign navies in our waters. They're down in the warm weather having a good time while you and I are out with the shovels.
Well, do you believe there's foreign vessels in our waters? I don't know. Are there?
Oh, hey, you hear it all the time up by Alaska and Vancouver of Russian and Chinese Navy going into our waters. Why are they not here defending our home waters? Do we have such a failed federal government and a failed military that they can't even protect us? They're not here. Why aren't they here? That's my question.
Oddly, I've never heard that. I've never heard that Chinese and others are in our waters constantly. I've never heard that.
No, just listen to the BC News and you hear it all the time. Okay? But
the DC, what's the DC News? What's the DC News? What's the DC News?
British Columbia.
Oh, the BC News. Oh, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay.
And my question is why is our Navy not in our home waters right now? They should be. They should be looking for the drug ships and any foreign Navy. And, hey, while they're out there, if somebody's illegally fishing in our waters, hey, they can deal with it.
Matt, thanks for the call. I guess you've made your point. Although I don't know where he gets all his information from. The BC News. Marianne, go ahead. You're on the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour.
Hi, Larry. Marianne here. I just wanted to talk about Canada. I think if Trump makes a 51st state, I'm not agreeable with that. One thing I like about Ontario, at least, we do have a health care system. Yes, there's some of it that's not going right or stuff like that. But at least if we need to go to the doctors or the hospital, we at least have coverage here. I know we pay it through our taxes, but if we were in the States, we'd have to pay. I think we'd be shocked what we'd have to pay to go to see a doctor appointment or the health care system. And the other thing I want to say, I like Canada for their maple syrup. I love the maple syrup.
Okay. Absolutely. Yeah. Two good points, Marianne. Thank you. And Okay, healthcare system needs some money, needs some investments in Ontario. It's flawed. It's not perfect. It's all these things wrong, but it works. It does work right now for a lot of people. I have somebody I know that just went through the thing and like surgery, the whole thing, and we always talk about that, is how many, they'd be bankrupt if this was the United States, and they pay zero. One more call before the break. Here's toll-free Jay. Toll-free Jay, go ahead. You're on the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour.
Well, Larry, when all is said and done, let's just ignore all the problems that we can't solve and just enjoy Canada-U.S. with hockey tomorrow night and have a good time with it.
All right. Thank you. Toll-free Jay. Maybe that should, we should ride everything on the score of the game. I'm being facetious, but, settle our differences on the ice, and here's what counts. We win, no tariffs. Now, well, why am I even joking about that? I don't know. More of your calls in a moment. It's the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour, 570 News Radio. Larry Fedoruk in for Mike Farwell. More of your calls on the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour. Tom, go ahead. Tom, you're on the show.
How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Not bad for a Friday nice day out there. We're going to chase this dog's tail with the border and everything else, not the United States. For years, like we've had this issue, and it never became an issue or a problem until now because they've got a convict in the White House. And I'm sorry if that offends anybody, but he's a convicted felon and he's a convict in the White House. The U.S. does not do their fair share to prevent any guns, drugs, or anything else coming across into our border from their side of the border. From a point where the last call you had, they were talking about Canada can't defend itself. 1957, there was a project called the Avro Arrow. And when the Avro Arrow was developed and being developed, it proved to be the fastest and most sophisticated military aircraft in the world, which at the time would have given Canada the means to defend itself, would have defended the Arctic and possibly North America. Now, I have no idea what happened between Mr. Eisenhower and Mr. Diefenbaker, but suddenly that project got scuttled. And parts of it probably in Lake Ontario, and we will never know. When the U.S. comes knocking on your door and says, well, listen, they don't want another country really to be in the position to defend itself because of whatever their means is, but we will defend you, or we will supply the means to defend yourself, providing you give us something in return. And this is what it all seems to be about now, is that they're as Kissinger said, the United States does not have friends, they have associates, or they have business people. They don't have a lot of friends. And right now, the allies are starting to realize some things here, is that with the new sheriff in town, as J.D. Vance said here just a little while ago, is that they're doing something that a person did a few years ago who wanted to get out of a war in Asia, who wanted to dismantle a couple of agencies in the government there, but lost his life doing it. And they're just doing it in a different way. So being a Canadian, I'm proud to be a Canadian when I hear somebody from Denmark or from Holland saying, thank you for defending or coming to our rescue, or Italy and that. When you can meet people and they just smile and say thank you very much and stuff like that. That's what it means to be a Canadian to me. But when there are others who are in Canada who start complaining about the government and how Canada is, well, there's the door. If you don't like it here, there you go. And that's part of being Canadians. We're polite until you push us. And now we're being pushed. I don't think you've got to wave the flag. And as you said, everybody's idea of being a patriot or showing patriotism and respect is going to be totally different. I do agree that you got to show respect for the national anthem. Take your hats off, stand up there. You don't have to put your hand over your heart. Even when another country's national anthem being played, despite what you like, pay the respect and let it be played, because those athletes that are on the ice or on the field or anything like that, they're there. They're not politically involved in this. Hopefully not. And if you don't like the American anthem, sit down. But don't be that disrespectful.
Yeah,
so there's many ways to be a patriot, be patriotism and that. But let's stop being nice. Let's just call things the way they are. And if you want to wave the flag, that's great. But you can be polite, be a Canadian, and that's what it is, being a Canadian.
Tom, thanks for the call. Great call, man. I mean, why is it that 90% of the time we hear the anthem is at a sporting event. Why is that even a thing anyway? So stand for it or don't, I guess, but be respectful, as Tom's message. Sophia, if you wouldn't mind holding on, you'll be next when we return with more of the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour on 570 News Radio.
Here's special guest host, Larry Fedoruk.
And let's get right to more of your calls on the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour. And Sophia, first of all, thank you for holding. I appreciate that as we got through all of our news and our business there. And Sophia, go ahead. You're on the show.
Oh, yes. Hi. I want to talk because I listen all the time about hospitals, which false information. Yep, I've been in hospital in September, and I saw this problem. Nobody seen problem in hospital. Doctor has very fast, a specialist has next day. I don't see problem. What is problem for me was in hospital? Too many people walking, talking, laughing. I thinking sometimes, and I talk with other people to be in hospital. Everybody tells the same. What does people do? Too many people in hospital. We don't need too many. For me, hospital was perfect. Problem is in North, because I lived in North Canada 1 year, don't have doctors. Why? Because doctors don't want to go to North. That is problem. That is not wrong. Fourth, we need, because we need right now work. Lots of immigrants, they live in my neighbor's basement, cry because they can't find job. And they upset why they came to Canada. Canada taking people don't have any work. That is problem. We need to do work for these people. And everywhere is misinformation. These people want to be elected like Steiner, Bonnie Crandall, Mary Styles. They false information many times. I listen what they give, wrong information. Thank you very much.
All right. Sophia, thank you. Sophia, I didn't get all of that. Part of that is my issue, certainly not yours, and part of that was the phone issue too. So, I've just been through, I haven't been through, but I've been visiting someone in the hospital who's been through a lot of stuff lately. And boy, yeah, there is a lot of people in there. And one of the things Sophia was mentioning that I'm taking from what she said was that the hospital is a noisy place with a lot of people. And sometimes you wonder, why is there a quiet sign outside the hospital? Because there's a hospital zone and it's so loud in a hospital because it's tough. But and Sophia also pointing out, I think what I said earlier, that we do have problems and it's not perfect, but I'm glad we have a health system. I will add that. Here's Terry. Terry, go ahead. Hey, Terry, we got you now. Go ahead, sir. Or
comes in. Oh,
there we go, Terry. You're on now. Sorry.
Okay. How you doing, Larry?
I'm doing okay. How are you?
Oh, not too bad. This
Good.
51st state thing, I think it's just a lot of overkill. I remember back in '88 when they were doing, the two governments were negotiating over free trade. And, everybody was kind of kept in the dark about that. Nobody knew exactly what was to become of that. I remember crossing the border prior to 1989, that summer basically of '88. And I joke with the customs officials on both ends. So what are you guys going to do come January 1st? You're all going to be out of a job because our border is going to be eliminated. Because I didn't know, like nobody that I knew had an idea what was going on. We heard about all this talk about free trade, eliminating the border, everything was going to be easier to get through. So I didn't know if that applied to goods or even people. But anyway, back in the 80s, I used to work in Toronto. And Toronto was a bastion of industry. I mean, you had factories of everything. You had the Sunlight detergent factory, you had Campbell's, you had Kimberly-Clark, you had Royale. Nowadays, Toronto basically, after free trade, all that Toronto has become is just basically corporate offices and banks and stuff like that. There's very little industry in Toronto anymore. The big business, they all fled south to produce goods because it was just a lot cheaper. And the thing with the Uncle Donald down there, I think he just tries to get a reaction out of people. I mean, if he says nothing, nobody pays attention to him. Whereas if he says things, ridiculous things as they may be, at least he's getting noticed and people are, getting that reaction. I think that's what he looks for. I think he just wants people to react to what he says. So it's kind of strange, but I don't know what's going to happen. I mean, I think it's just ridiculousnly and a lot of overkill talk, but we will see. It's like I said when I started the call back in '88, nobody knew what free trade was all about until after basically everything just fled south. So who knows? Anyway, Larry, thanks for listening and have yourself a great weekend.
Yep. You too, man. Thank you for the call. I don't think that, America's GDP manufacturing right now is 10% of their GDP. They're not a manufacturing country. You could say that maybe Canada was one time too, and America was when Henry Ford made automobiles and Phillips made appliances. And I don't know that North America are manufacturing nations. And we seem to have gotten into this political thing that sells well and sounds good, made in Canada, made in America. And if made in America makes you sell more WeatherTech floor mats, or made in Canada makes you sell more toilet tissue, then great. If you tap into something and people that suddenly says, I want to buy Canadian, I want to support Canadian goods and manufacturing, then that's great, but that's just such a small aspect of, we basically sold off manufacturing to Asia years ago. We sold it off. We sold it off to nations that don't have minimum wages or necessarily have factory and workplace standards and all these things where they can produce goods cheaper for a number of reasons. We sold that off. And there are other industries that don't, I'm not saying we shouldn't be industrious. I mentioned it the other day. You know who's a big manufacturing nation? Germany. And you know what Germany is worried about? Branching out away from manufacturing to have some irons in other fires so they don't rely so much on manufacturing. We rely very little on manufacturing. And I don't know that making stuff is necessarily where we want to go economically. Afif, go ahead. You're on the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour here on 570 News Radio. Go ahead.
Hey, Larry. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Good. I just want to say, Trump, I know he's a businessman. He's like a big, what's that called? Like real estate type of guy. But
right.
The only thing I remember, and what everybody should remember is, you're fired. Celebrity Apprentice. Because that's all I remember him from. So I don't know how he went from that to a politician.
From alleged billionaire developer to reality show star to the Oval Office. Yeah, it is quite something.
Yeah. And that's why I'm like, how does he, what does he know about politics and everything when he's from where he came from? It doesn't make sense.
I think, thanks for the call, man. I got to go to a break here. I don't think he knows nothing, but I think somebody saw in him a method to either, what am I trying to say here? Speak to people who feel they haven't been heard, or because he's the everyman guy, but he's a billionaire, lives in a penthouse in New York. How does he represent the everyman? There's something he's tapped into, or somebody saw that he could tap into it, where you don't have to know about politics, you just have to know how to win an election. Maybe as a summary of that. More of your calls in a moment. It's the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour, 570 News Radio. I'm Larry Fedorkin from Mike Farwell. Continuing with your calls on the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour, 519-570-2545, 519-570-2545, 1-800-570-5715, or star 570 on your cell with Zebar. on your mind, picking up on the things we've been talking about, which is, understandably a lot of Trump tariffs, stuff like that, and what are we doing about it, which then segues right into a federal liberal leadership race right now, which then segues into a provincial election, and everybody's pounding on that tariff drum going, yeah, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? What are we going to do? And it's, that's legitimate. That's legitimate. As much as I think it was kind of ridiculous that Doug Ford was in D.C., part of me says he had to go. All the premiers were going. The premiers were trying to do a Team Canada effort, that it's not just all the federal government, that it's the provinces had to, just the same way some mayors were there as well. So, what does the mayor of Kitchener do in Washington? Well, he's got to be there, part of the team, because this is new. Since when is our best friend and neighbor threatening us with crippling tariffs? Well, since the last time, but now really seriously threatening us. So we're trying to figure out what to do. Shanaz, go ahead. You're on the 12 o'clock Talkback Hour.
Hi, Larry. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good. My question is, where are we going to put the next snow? There's no room anywhere. The mountains are higher than we can throw the snow. I don't see the cities picking up any of the snow like they did. I think a number of years back, they would come and just take off the top of the mountains, and they're not doing that. So my question is, where do we put this snow?
It'll be a problem, and that's a good question, because I think they're supposed to be taking away some snow, but when you have storms that are back to back to back, there's no time to take it away before the next one comes. So in other words, I don't know the answer to your question, but
yeah, because really, we do not have any place to put it now, and it's going to come. So what, do we put it back on the road? They're just going to put it back in front of our driveway. Yeah.
I know this.
No space.
Wow. Thanks for the call, Shanaz. I know it is an actual issue, but I do know they were sort of the next step after clearing is getting as much of it away and out into wherever they take it as they can. But when you have like 20, 25 centimeters, and then the next day another 20, and then the next day another 20, we got the break today. I think they're doing as much as they can, but it's people around the world, I hate to be this way, but people around the world are dealing with worse than a couple of winter storms. So we'll deal with it, I guess. John, go ahead. John, you're on 570 News Radio.
Good afternoon, Mike. I have a problem with the healthcare system.
Okay.
16 years, it's getting to be 16 years now. I was one of the people, we came home from Florida. My wife was sick. I was sick. Put my wife in the hospital. 2 weeks later, they said to me, Johnny, we don't even know right now why your wife's alive, right? They finally found out the problem was kidney disease, Crohn's. 12 weeks later, she had taken a stroke, put a floating clot in the carotid artery. The carotid artery moved. Now she's a 62-year-old woman, has no memories at all. And what brings me here is one simple little thing. I cannot get a pair of glasses for her because she can't go up to the university. She's in bed 24 hours a day, like a lot of other people. And so her eyes never get tested. So my argument is, with the government, is I quit my job back in 2007. I'm fortunate enough to own the company. So it cost me approximately $50,000 to bring her home. And yet, if I put her in a home, or in this case, Pelton Care, I would be able to have my job. They would take care of her. and time would go by. But because I decide to bring her home and give her what she needs, you lose your pay. The government will take her blood test for free. You will pay $55 for it, for the privilege of bringing her home. You will pay for all of the changes of pants, which nowadays, as you know, for an adult, runs you around $35 for a package of pants. You have a doctor that comes around and looks at people in Pelton care and in a home, and the government keeps saying it takes 4 years to get a senior into a home or Pelton care, and yet I believe they tell you the cost is well over $125,000 to $150,000. Why don't you just give me the $50,000 or the salary that people give up to come home to take care of their loved ones 24 hours a day?
Right.
And you could take all these people that are willing to give up their jobs, come home, and all they ask for is give us the same thing. Do our blood tests for free. Get a doctor that will come out of their office to constantly, once in a while, do a checkup, see how you're doing. And that $50,000 or $40,000 or $30,000, whatever you gave up back, I gave up back
John?
in.
Yeah, John, I'm going to stop there only because there's a lot going on there, a lot to unpack, a lot of detail, and I'm up against the clock here. But we will be back in a moment here, 570 News Radio. Larry Fedoruk in for Mike Farwell. Once again, happy Valentine's Day. And if you're thinking tomorrow you're going to go in and buy all that Valentine chocolate on sale, I can almost guarantee you it'll be gone. Not because it's sold out. What happens now? What happens? How come there's no on sale Halloween candy on November 1st? It was just gone. They took it off the shelves. Christmas is different because they already established Boxing Day routine for Christmas, and that items you could get before Christmas would be there right after Christmas at a reduced price. That's our tradition. Every observance should have a Boxing Day. We should be able to buy Valentine candy and chocolate on sale tomorrow, but I'll bet you'll be right off the shelves. They'll take it away. Rather than liquidate it at a reduced price, they'll just take it away. Oh, well. Anyway, happy Valentine's Day and happy Family Day. If you get the day, not everybody gets it, but if you get the day, as one of our panelists on the Friday 4 panel said, just spend some time with family on Family Day. And I hope you spend some time with the one you love today on Valentine's Day. Thank you for having me on 570 News Radio. I will be back in for Mike on Tuesday, so we'll talk soon. Have a great weekend.